Magical World War I. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 501, The Three-Stage Change of the Holy Light Kingdom. With more than 200 ghost ships, Charlotte could occasionally take a break, and the loss of more than a dozen ghost ships gave him a chance to breathe. He always suspected that there was something under the sea helping him, but the battle was tied and he had no time to check. Charlotte recovered 70% to 80% of his strength, picked up the Flame Knight's spear again, roared, and continued to fight. He was able to fight more and more bravely in the Ghost Fleet, mainly because in the last battle, he had a bunch of Holy Order subordinates who robbed the Ghost Fleet's ancient magic ghost warships and subdued the Ghost Holy Orders. This time he didn't encounter opponents above the Holy Order. The second is his supernatural power. 18 flaming hands were always flying outside Charlotte, each holding an extraordinary weapon, which was equivalent to a small team, and there was no need to worry about casualties. After all, there were almost no vital points of the flaming hands that could be attacked, and the battles were all one-sided beatings, which were more powerful than the real battles of more than 10 people. As for the extraordinary weapons, it goes without saying, which is also one of the important reasons. Charlotte Mays liked 5 more ghost ships, withdrew from the battle, took a breath for a while, recovered a little strength, ate a quick bite of food, and then joined the battle again. Agmiras sent out the Ishmarin Palace for the second time, and this time he refused to retreat no matter what. This could only mean one thing: this evil god is in big trouble now, and he can't mobilize his main force to deal with Charlotte, the evil god challenger. Charlotte remembered that she had heard before that the evil gods in the New World were fighting, and she believed more and more that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The Holy Light Kingdom transformed into a giant whale, and its speed suddenly doubled. It repeatedly collided with the Ishmarin Palace. The slow-moving Ishmarin Palace could only continuously fire ghost shells, but this giant whale had thick skin and flesh, and was not afraid of the ghost shells at all. When it circled around the Ishmarin Palace, it swallowed all the ghost ships it encountered in one gulp, and its eyes were full of small lights of happiness. It was obvious that it had been starving for a long time. Every time it hit, it would knock something off the Ishmarin Palace. This giant whale king was not picky about food, and would open its huge mouth to swallow anything it hit. Its appetite seemed endless. After fighting for several hours, Charlotte estimated that it had eaten at least 3 times more food than its own size, but it still had no burps or signs of being full. It was still as happy as a starving whale reincarnated, and its appetite was even bigger. The sky brightened again, the stars disappeared, and the sun rose. Charlotte calculated that his ghost ships had exceeded 350, but there seemed to be nearly 1,000 ghost ships operated by the Ishmarin Palace on the sea, which was not much less. He was slightly surprised and thought to himself, this ghost fleet is not endless, right? However, he also noticed that after he subdued 350 ghost ships, the quality of the ghost fleet operated by the Ishmarin Palace became worse and worse, and there were even a group of small sampans. I don't know how these things can be mixed into such a large-scale naval battle. Are they worthy of being called ghost ships? After all, Charlotte had commanded the fleet for a long time, and had learned a lot from the Golden Goat Rolf. At this time, he had enough ghost ships and began to play some small tactics, such as commanding his own ghost fleet to surround a group of ghost ships and letting another group of ghost ships snipe the enemies coming to rescue. After changing to the new tactics, his efficiency in subduing ghost ships did not improve much, but the loss of his ghost ships was greatly reduced. After becoming familiar with this set of tactics, Charlotte divided the ghost ships into dozens of groups, each with several ships. Some of them still sniped the ghost ships operated by the Ishmarin Palace, and the other part relied on sophisticated tactics to form a pincer attack on the lone ghost ships, waiting for Charlotte to conquer en masse. Originally, Charlotte had to jump off the ship continuously and look for the next target, which also wasted some time, but with the cooperation of the ghost ships, his efficiency in subduing ghost ships also improved. When night fell on the second day of the sea battle, Charlotte had more than 600 ghost ships. Although the number of ghost ships she controlled was still behind that of the fleet controlled by the Ishmarin Palace, the actual combat power of both sides was almost the same, because Charlotte's ghost ships were obviously more powerful. Although the ghost ships of the Ishmarin Palace were frequently replenished, Their quality was getting worse and worse. Charlotte withdrew from the battle and rested again. When she was recovering her strength, she saw the giant whale utter a loud whale song and dived into the sea. 10 minutes later, a sea snake that was no less than the giant whale floated to the surface of the sea. Although Charlotte knew that the Holy Light Kingdom was very weird, she didn't expect it to be so weird. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and thought, I wonder if I will be on their backs or in their stomachs when the Holy Light Kingdom turns into a giant whale and a sea serpent while I am on the boat. The Holy Light Kingdom, which turned into a sea serpent, was much more ferocious than the giant whale king. He just turned his huge body slightly and set off a raging sea wave. This sea serpent rode the waves and pounced directly on the Ishmaran palace. This sea serpent swam in the palace transformed from the remains of the evil god. Wherever it passed, everything collapsed. The Ishmaran palace let out a strange and painful whistle. Countless resentful spirits rushed into the air and turned into various resentful spirit shells, spears, and giant crossbows, bombarding the body of the sea serpent endlessly. In just over 2 hours, the sea serpent's body was torn apart. Obviously, although he was fierce and caused extremely amazing damage, his defense was not as good as the Holy Light Kingdom, and it was far less than the giant whale king. Before Charlotte had time to worry, the sea serpent swung its tail, smashed down a house, and swam into the sea. Half an hour later, the Holy Light Kingdom floated out of the sea again. Its two sides of the ship opened its huge mouth, and countless branches stretched out from the huge mouth, desperately swallowing the wreckage of the Ishmaran palace on the sea. The Ishmaran palace seemed to be severely damaged, and it did not move for a long time. When it recovered and wanted to recover the fragments that fell on the sea, the wreckage had been almost eaten by the Holy Light Kingdom. Charlotte captured more than 100 ghost ships in the past few hours. At this time, the situation of the naval battle had been completely reversed, and Charlotte kept chasing the ghost ship controlled by the Ishmaran palace. The Ishmaran palace suddenly made a strange whistle again. The ghost ships controlled by him suddenly stopped for a moment, as if they were struggling, but then one after another, they sailed towards the Ishmaran palace. The palace formed from the remains of the evil god had countless cracks. As the ghost ship sailed in, the cracks made sounds of chewing and swallowing. In a blink of an eye, hundreds of ghost ships were swallowed by the Ishmaran palace. The palace formed from the remains of the evil god was recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. Chapter 502 Let Amabella go to Ishmaran palace to give birth to baby. Charlotte didn't want to let the Ishmaran palace recover. He commanded his ghost fleet to intercept the ghost ships operated by the Ishmaran palace. This time, the ghost ships operated by the Ishmaran palace showed a cooperative attitude. Even when Charlotte chased a certain ship, in order to save Charlotte time, there was an incident where the ghost crew jumped into the sea on their own. Despite this, Charlotte still couldn't stop the Ishmaran palace from swallowing up the ghost ships. He only intercepted a part of them. A few hours later, only Charlotte's ghost fleet was left on the sea. The ghost fleet belonging to the Ishmaran palace had been swallowed up by him. The Ishmaran palace, which had been restored to its full glory, was surrounded by countless resentful spirits. These resentful spirits gathered together and faintly formed a giant spirit. This giant spirit held a trident, with a naked upper body, but the lower body was like smoke and fog, ethereal and uncertain. Charlotte's ghost fleet had exceeded 900 ships. He issued an order to let the ghost fleet retreat. Obviously, they would not be needed in the next battle. He took a ghost ship and returned to the Holy Light Kingdom. As soon as Charlotte stepped onto the Holy Light Kingdom, she heard a cold voice that suppressed all her thoughts, Charlotte Mecklen. As the voice shook, everything in front of Charlotte disappeared, and he appeared again in another world, standing on the platform of a palace. It was still the same 5 people, a woman with a graceful figure and a face that looked 80% like Amabella, smiling and saying to the little boy in her hand, "Your father is a hero. He is fighting hard for our whole family. You should be proud of him, and you should be as brave as him in the future." The boy's eyes were as clear as water, full of innocence, but he secretly made a face at Charlotte. Well, it was not the kind of face that a child would show innocence, but a real face. The whole face was suddenly full of eyes. Even with Charlotte's courage, her legs and feet almost went weak. This was the first time he saw Amon's true face. He would never see it again. It was still an ordinary boy, who looked cuter. Vasuki, with a human body and a snake tail, lazy and calm, and stunningly beautiful, lay in a low voice, motionless, as if she was injured. Charlotte did not dare to go over to comfort her. What comfort? Say you are too tired, I will make you some fries later. Tapacharato, who is tall and wears a crown on her head, looks like the queen of classical gods and elves. Her eyes are even more painful. She is weaving a new crown. Charlotte looks at the branches of the crown that are constantly wriggling, and the flowers that open and close like small mouths. She is 1000% sure that she absolutely does not want to wear it on her head. His head is not that delicious. The slightly fat, plump and juicy king of giant whales is still eating secretly. She is still eating the crew members on the ghost ship. Well, this scene is very evil. The palace transformed by the holy light god kingdom released colorful light, still entangled with the Ishmaran palace surrounded by black air. The two palaces floated in the endless void, surrounded by darkness, but every time they collided, even the darkness trembled, much more intensely than the last time. However, this time, there was no ghost ship sailing in the void. Charlotte thought that this battle no longer needed her. Then she heard Amabella clenched her fist and said, "You came at the right time. Ishmaran has revived. Our whole family needs you. Go and challenge Ishmaran in person." Charlotte looked at the giant spirit towering like a mountain above the Ishmaran palace, and couldn't help thinking, how the hell do we fight this? I'm not even as thick as one of his legs. Charlotte hadn't figured out whether she should ask Amun for help and point out a route for her to escape. The strange gap where he escaped last time had disappeared. Obviously, Amabella had repaired this loophole. Suddenly, 5 strange powers poured into his body. In just a moment, Charlotte Mecklen felt that every inch of her body was filled with the power of the evil god. The 5 evil powers of different attributes, miraculously, did not conflict with each other, but they were endless. After filling his body, they continued to forcefully pour in, causing his body to slowly swell. Charlotte looked at her body in shock, which continued to grow larger. Although it had expanded to its peak, it was only a few hundred picometers. Compared with Ishmaran's huge body, it was still like an ant compared to an elephant, but it was still amazing enough. The Flame Knight spear in Charlotte's hand, worthy of being the incarnation of the flame evil god Enlulu, also soared to thousands of picometers, as thick as the largest pillar in the palace. He didn't have time to think about anything else, and hurriedly urged all the evil god energy in his body to slam into Ishmaran fiercely. Charlotte thrust with all her might, but it was like hitting an iron plate. Ishmaran's body looked weak, but there was an invisible barrier covering him. Even with the power of 5 divine creatures, it was still impossible to break it. Charlotte suddenly heard a voice, "Charlotte, don't be afraid, I am your teacher Juno." Outside the body of the evil god, there is the divine power they wield, which condenses a force field, which is what we commonly call divine glory. Only by fundamentally eliminating their powers can the divine glory disappear. It is impossible to break the evil god's force field with brute force alone. Charlotte was shocked and shouted, "Teacher Juno? Why are you here?" Juno Arthur's voice was very gentle, and he said, "I am worried about my students." Just when Charlotte was deeply moved, he added, "And the fallen evil god is the most delicious food. How could I miss the feast? Your teacher is also a person who aspires to become a god." Charlotte couldn't help but be speechless, and asked, "How can we eliminate the divine glory of Ishmaran?" Juno said, "He is the evil god who controls death, but the power he controls is incomplete. He has only touched the edge of death. Otherwise, he would be the 10th righteous god. As long as we break the death in him, we can offset his authority and eliminate his divine glory." Charlotte asked, "Break the death? How to do it?" Juno said, "Isn't Amabella pregnant? Let her give birth in Ishmaran Palace." Charlotte really took a long time to understand her teacher's imagination. She couldn't help but complain, "Teacher, you can use your imagination to write novels. But is this kind of thing possible? Apart from anything else, can Amabella give birth just like that? Will she have enough time?" Juno replied meaningfully, "She is a divine creature. When have you ever heard that evil gods must conform to the logic of normal people?" Chapter 503, Evil God Level War. Charlotte asked, "Even if this is feasible, how can I send Amabella up?" Juno's voice was silent for a long time, and suddenly he said, "Why don't you ask Amabella?" Charlotte suddenly didn't want to pay attention to her teacher. Is it okay to ask this question? What's more, it's such an offensive question to ask an evil god. Amabella is not a kind person. What if she gets angry and eats him? Although he doesn't know why Amabella treats him as a husband, he really knows that he has nothing to do with this divine creature. Yes, he has nothing to do with Amun. When Charlotte thought of Amun, she remembered the ghost face he made to her just now. It was too scary. Charlotte kept circling Ishmael, swinging the Flame Knight's spear, bombarding one part after another, trying to find his weakness, but all attempts were in vain. This revived evil god seemed to have no flaws on his body, and the evil god's power covering his body had no dead angles. After trying for a while, Charlotte suddenly sank and landed in the Ishmael palace. He even put away the Flame Knight's spear and used his expanded body to continuously destroy the palace. Every time he destroyed a little, he threw it hard and threw it at the Holy Light God Kingdom. The Holy Light God Kingdom almost accepted everything that came to it. No matter what Charlotte Mecklen threw, it was swallowed up. Charlotte also knew that the Ishmael palace was as huge as a city. Even if he became a giant several hundred kilometers tall, it would be impossible to completely demolish the palace that was transformed from the remains of the evil god in a short period of time. But he believed that time would work. As long as he could continue, he would be able to demolish the Ishmael palace sooner or later. Charlotte did not believe that after demolishing the Ishmael palace, the revived evil god could still survive. After Ishmael appeared, he held the trident and continued to attack the Holy Light Kingdom. However, since Charlotte appeared, he was completely attracted by Charlotte. At this time, he held the trident upside down and kept poking at her. However, Charlotte was as fast as a fish, and he could not poke her. The Holy Light Kingdom took the opportunity to ram into it, and kept knocking down debris. Ishmael was furious and fought back several times, and also blasted the Holy Light Kingdom into pieces. In the endless black sky, two huge palaces with different styles kept colliding with each other. A giant spirit appeared above the Ishmael palace, waving a huge trident in his hand. This battle was earth-shattering. Reflected in the real world, it was a legendary warship hitting a floating palace. Under such a fierce attack, the hulls, houses, various buildings, and ship towers of both sides were constantly smashed, peeled off, and transferred into the sea. All the creatures in this sea area died because of this battle. Large groups of sea fish floated to the surface, their bellies turned white, and they even rotted quickly. Under the sea, it was pitch black. The sea was no longer azure blue, but endless darkness. Gareth emerged from the sea with no expression on his face. He looked at the battle between the two giants, and suddenly accelerated, swam close to the Ishmael palace, jumped onto the palace transformed from the remains of the evil god, and kicked a part of the palace dome that had rolled down into the sea. At an altitude of several thousand meters, Juno closed his eyes and floated in the clouds. His spiritual consciousness had already dived into another world. Compared with Gareth, Juno Arthur was closer to the god level. He had close contact with several divine creatures on the Holy Light Kingdom, and had a new understanding of the god level, so he could do such an incredible thing. In the endless black sky, Juno was not actually hiding in the void, but like Charlotte, he stepped onto the Ishmael palace. He did not destroy it, but kept searching. Juno was like a shadow. Nothing could stop him. No matter what ruins, he could pass through them and look for something hidden in the deepest part of the palace. Charlotte pulled up a fountain with both hands and threw it out fiercely, then went to look for other targets. Under the pulled-out fountain, a dark hole was exposed. Juno's eyes suddenly lit up, and he turned into a bloody light and drilled into the bottom. He was like an old horse who knew the way. He drilled around in the underground like a maze and soon found a ball of flesh and blood. It had no shape, just a huge ball of flesh and blood, bigger than a house, dark red in color, but it kept beating and seemed to have life. Juno pounced on it. This huge ball of flesh and blood decayed at a speed visible to the naked eye and soon turned into a pile of debris. Juno swallowed this ball of flesh and blood and continued to change direction to look for the target. This ball of flesh and blood was swallowed by Juno, and Ishmael suddenly hesitated for a moment. Charlotte soared into the sky, and the Flame Knight's spear reappeared in his palm. He didn't know if this was not an opportunity. Anyway, it's not a big deal to make a single move. The shot happened to hide a slightly bumpy spot behind Ishmael. The revived evil god suddenly let out a strange howl, as if it was stung. Charlotte was also surprised, because this shot broke the divine light on Ishmael's body. He immediately sensed that countless evil forces were gushing over to imprison him. Charlotte hurriedly twisted it hard, and made a big hole in Ishmael's huge body, and then withdrew and fled. A giant palm fell from the sky and slapped the place where Charlotte had just attacked, but Charlotte had already escaped. Ishmael only slapped his huge body with a loud bang. Charlotte put away the Flame Knight's spear. He felt that his body was about to collapse. He didn't dare to fight anymore and fled back to the Holy Light God Kingdom. As soon as he landed on the Holy Light Kingdom, the 5 evil gods' powers in his body withdrew one after another. He returned to his human form, collapsed on the ground, and gasped for breath. Looking directly at the evil gods would cause countless sequelae, not to mention bearing the power of 5 evil gods with his flesh. Charlotte felt that his body was giving the most serious warning. It had exceeded its limit and could collapse at any time. Charlotte hurriedly urged Bloody Glory to repair his body over and over again. He even tried the blood flame transformation technique dozens of times, turning himself into a ball of blood flames, and then returning to his human form, hoping to use this to recover from the hidden injuries on his body, but the effect was minimal. Oh no. Am I going to die here? No, I absolutely cannot die here. Charlotte kept cheering up and trying all the secret methods of Bloody Glory. But the speed at which he repaired his body could not even keep up with the speed at which his flesh collapsed. Charlotte gradually felt desperate, but every time a thought of despair arose, he would extinguish it without hesitation and pray silently, "You who travel the long river of time, know all mysteries, master extraordinary rituals, and rule the court of fate. I am willing to pay a portion of the joy of fate in exchange for a healthy body." Chapter 504, The Snake of Fate Doesn't Count. Charlotte prayed 5 or 6 times, and thought her prayers might not be answered, but suddenly a math formula appeared in front of her. This math formula was a mess, with dozens of addition and subtraction formulas, but more than 10 errors were made. Then Charlotte heard the familiar voice of the boy, saying, "Help me calculate how much joy of destiny you have now." Charlotte was stunned for a while, and then she realized that the snake of destiny did not want to respond to her, but the little snake did not figure out how much joy of destiny he had. Before, Charlotte owed the snake of destiny 32 joys of destiny. At this time, he secretly thought, should I calculate the wrong account for the little snake? But he immediately killed this blasphemous idea, not only listed all the data clearly and calculated cleanly, but also attached some mathematical basics to each math formula with the simplest and clearest tutorials, so that elementary school students can learn and understand by themselves. After a round of calculations, Charlotte found that he still owed the fate snake 3 destiny joys, which made him feel relieved and thought to himself, my speed of earning destiny joys is not bad. When Charlotte submitted this answer equivalent to a primary math tutorial, he felt a light slap on his head from the snake's tail. This slap was very gentle, conveying the fate snake's good mood. With a slap, a strange force merged into the body, and all the remnants of the evil god's power were extracted. Without the overload of the evil god's power, Charlotte's bloody glory was fully activated, and his body immediately slowly recovered. He was so happy that he couldn't help but pray again, "You who travel in the long river of time, understand all mysteries, and master extraordinary rituals, the master of the court of destiny. I am willing to pay 1 share of the joy of destiny in exchange for this battle to withstand the power of the evil god." Without being harmed, the voice of the serpent of destiny sounded slowly, "At least 7 shares." Charlotte gritted her teeth and was about to agree, when she heard the young man's voice, which sounded slowly again, "Pay 20 shares of the joy of destiny, and I can permanently exempt you from the harm caused by bearing the power of the Holy Light God's kingdom." Charlotte was overjoyed and said quickly, "I do." Anyway, the joy he owed to the serpent of destiny was as high as 32 shares. Although he had just returned a part of it, what was wrong with owing some more? Being able to borrow a gift from the serpent of fate, one of the 9 true gods, would help to bring the little snake closer. Charlotte only felt a blood rhinoceros hidden in the bloody vortex move slightly, and 5 different cores appeared in succession. There are 7 grooves on the blood rhinoceros that can be embedded, 2 of which have long been embedded with cores. One is the holy blood core of the Duolian family, and the other is dark red like a flame, and there is a faint smoke, which belongs to the power of the evil god of fire. Now there are 5 more, which are the power of the 5 divine creatures on the holy light god. One is surrounded by clear light and seems to have countless feathers. It must be the power of Omibella. One is like a whale, naive and cute, and it is the power of the king of giant whales. One is a human body with a snake tail curled up, which is the power of the sea snake Vasuji. One is full of green, like a small crown, which is the power of the ancient Madara tree Dapakilaruo. The last embedding was before countless eyes. If it was a few days ago, Charlotte might not have known it, but now he knew it was Amon's power. The blood spirit rhino had become a complete body, and all 7 grooves were filled. Charlotte immediately knew how the destiny snake permanently solved the problem of the evil god's power erosion. As long as the evil god's power is not eroded, wouldn't it be permanent immunity? When the 5 divine creatures infused their power again, it would flow into the blood spirit rhino instead of his body, and naturally it would not erode. But such a simple thing, unless it was a righteous god, a mortal alchemist master, no matter how superb his skills were, would never be able to do such a thing. Charlotte sighed in his heart and patted the destiny snake's tail. Unexpectedly, the destiny snake responded and reduced his debt of the destiny joy. After resting for a few hours, Charlotte finally recovered from his injuries and regained his strength. Amabella said almost immediately, "This family needs a man. We need Charlotte Mecklen's protection. Please continue to fight for us." Charlotte thought to herself, the evil god is really inhumane. How could a decent woman send her husband to the battlefield? And so urgently, he thought of Juno's suggestion again. Although he knew it was a bit suicidal, he still couldn't help but said, "Amabella, I have something to discuss with you. Ishmael is the god of death. If you want to break his body, you can only offset his power. Corresponding to death is life. If you can go to Ishmael Palace to give birth to a child, we will be sure to win this battle." Well, letting his wife go to the battlefield to give birth to a child, is also quite evil. Although Charlotte knew that Amabella had nothing to do with him, he still felt that he seemed to have taken a big step towards the path of the evil god. Amabella was not angry, nor did she hesitate. Instead, she blushed and whispered, "How do you know that I'm pregnant again?" Charlotte thought to herself, "Amen told me," but when he saw Amen's little face suddenly turn pale, he knew that he must not tell the truth. Although he knew that Amen was not a normal child and was no less evil than Amabella, he still said calmly, "Of course I know. After all, we are husband and wife." Amabella didn't seem to have any doubts, and Amen's little face showed a grateful look, but Charlotte really didn't know whether Amen had human emotions. Anyway, he didn't dare to believe in the evil god. Amabella said decisively, "I will go to Ishmael Palace with you." Charlotte breathed a sigh of relief. She was not eaten alive by Amabella, and she also got support. Although it was a good thing no matter how you look at it. But Charlotte finally understood why teacher Juno Arthur said, "He is a divine creature." When have you ever heard that the evil god has to conform to the logic of normal people? The evil god does not need to conform to the logic of normal humans. He was puzzled now. Why would Amabella agree to such an outrageous thing? Charlotte reached out and grabbed the divine creature, and then saw a pair of white wings spread out from behind Amabella, and the two flew into the sky like a gust of wind. Ishmael seemed to sense the crisis and desperately fired ghost shells, one after another black light, swaying its long tail. But Amabella was extremely agile and dodged these ghost shells every time, and landed on Ishmael with Charlotte. Chapter 505 Dad, can I rename this palace as Emilia's Palace? Amabella hugged Charlotte with both hands. Charlotte felt terrified. Countless thoughts echoed in his mind, some were high-pitched, some were gentle, some were full of holiness, some were extremely evil, and some were full of indescribable obscurity. These thoughts almost made Charlotte's brain explode. At the same time, he also felt that his vitality, soul, consciousness, memory, and even all the secrets he had practiced in his life were being extracted by a mysterious force. Charlotte could see that his body was withering at a speed visible to the naked eye. He was panicked and wanted to stop the passing of all this, but suddenly a childish voice came to his mind. "Is it Dad?" Charlotte couldn't help but agree. "It's Dad," a little girl's voice shouted happily. "I knew it was Dad. Dad is the best to me. You actually gave me such a big palace." Charlotte still didn't understand where such a big palace came from. Then he heard Amabella weakly say, "I have to go back. I can't come out for the time being, and I can't accompany you anymore. Without me by your side, you must take care of yourself. Also, don't have children with those bitches." Charlotte felt the hands holding her gradually fade away, and Amabella just disappeared between heaven and earth. In the end, all she left for him was a gentle smile and reluctance to leave. Although Charlotte knew that he was not a human being, and did not have human emotions, and she were not a couple, and there was no human kind of emotion between the two, but she still felt an indescribable sadness. Before Charlotte could savor this sadness, she saw a little girl running around in the Ishmael Palace. She kept shouting, "What a beautiful palace! I love it here. Thank you, Dad, for giving me such a good gift." Charlotte looked at the little girl and felt as if someone had forced her to have an illegitimate daughter. She asked, "My daughter, what's your name?" The little girl shouted, "My name is Emilia. Emilia Mecklen, Dad. Can I change the name of this palace to Amelia's Palace? Charlotte realized that the little girl had regarded the Eichmann Palace as a gift from her. He hesitated for a moment and said, of course. Before he could say no, he saw Amelia shouting, I declare that this palace will be called Amelia's Palace from now on. I want a fountain over there. Then Charlotte's eyes widened, because he saw that a fountain really appeared in the direction of Amelia's little finger. Amelia pointed to another place and said, I like this place. I want a big building here. I want to live here, sleep well every day, and wake up under the starlight. Although waking up in the middle of the night was not like a good child, Charlotte did not say a word. Looking at a tall building rising from the ground, he finally knew that his daughter was also an evil god, and looked even more evil than Amen. This little thing could forcibly seize the control of the Eichmann Palace. It was simply evil to the extreme. You know, the 5 divine creatures on the Holy Light God Kingdom could not do this. Of course, Charlotte suspected that it might be because Amelia was born in the Eichmann Palace that this little thing had some connection with Eichmann. As Amelia pointed everywhere, the Eichmann Palace began to change drastically, but Charlotte also discovered that when Eichmann's power counterattacked again, some of the buildings Amelia forcibly designated would collapse for no reason. Some would disappear, and some would transform back to their original appearance. But the changes Amelia designated were also getting faster and faster, and her little mouth kept spitting out various buildings. Although Eichmann's counterattack was also extremely rapid, it was still possible to see that Amelia's designated buildings were increasing in number, and soon occupied 1/10 of the Eichmann Palace. Charlotte inexplicably developed a feeling towards this little girl. I want to protect her and help her, although he also knew that this little thing must be him. Although he didn't need his protection at all, he still activated the blood spirit and said, Dad is here to help you. Before he made his move, he hesitated and said, our whole family is a believer of the Snake of Fate. You also need to build a big temple of the Snake of Fate. You can lack anything here, but the temple of the Snake of Fate must not be lacking. Amelia waved her hand, seeming a little impatient, but a magnificent temple of the Snake of Fate still rose from the ground. Obviously, she still listened to her father's words. After the temple of the Snake of Fate was formed, the power of Eichmann's counterattack tried to shake the temple, but the power of the evil god just arrived and was repelled by a layer of divine light. Charlotte saw this scene and felt a little ridiculous. The Snake of Fate actually descended on its own divine favor. Isn't this equivalent to taking sides? When the 2 evil gods were fighting, one of the 9 righteous gods was taking sides. What the hell is this? If Eichmann had the guts, he would have pointed at the Fate Serpent and said, you are not a human being, but Charlotte estimated that only the wreckage was left of this evil god, and the resurrection was only the resurrection of a little power of the evil god, so she would never dare to talk to the little snake like that. With this immovable and unshakable temple of the Fate Serpent, Amelia's speed of transforming the Eichmann Palace was greatly increased, and soon her share of the Eichmann Palace was increased to 20%. The mountain-like figure of Eichmann, which was shrouded in the sky, finally gave up the entanglement with the Holy Light God Kingdom that was hitting him, and took a hard hit, and backhandedly inserted the trident. Charlotte didn't think twice and rushed forward recklessly, but Amelia waved her hand and blocked it with a wall. The little girl said coquettishly, Dad, don't worry, I'm not afraid of this big guy. The little thing stretched out her little finger and raised it high to the sky. Amelia was obviously just a little girl, with that little finger, tender and fragile. Eichmann's trident was like a demon mountain, huge and full of evil spirits, and followed by countless wronged souls. But when Amelia's little finger collided with the sharp edge of the trident, it didn't cause Charlotte to worry that her daughter would be stabbed to death by Eichmann's trident, but instead produced a shocking explosion. The huge series of piercing vibrations could burst the eardrums of any creature. Amelia proudly pointed to the sky with one hand, and with just one little finger, she withstood Eichmann's trident. No one could describe Charlotte's shock at that moment. He should have been panicked, afraid, and terrified, but he inexplicably felt a sense of pride, and couldn't help but have a thought, this is my daughter. Well, he is now completely integrated into the family atmosphere of the evil god. This is not a good thing. Amelia held a trident with her little finger and shouted in a fierce voice, Big guy, I'm not afraid of you. I am the daughter of the Mecklen family. I am Amelia Mecklen. Knowing my name, you should kneel down and surrender. You are so stubborn, I will let my father throw you into the endless void. I will wipe out the last bit of your will. I will turn you into a puppy. Charlotte thought to herself, your father doesn't have this ability. Eichmann roared loudly, pulled out the trident, raised it high, and prepared to poke it down again with more fierce momentum. Charlotte suddenly realized that Ishmael's divine light was dimming, and his evil god force field was disappearing. He shouted, Amidala, Tapacharato, Vasuji, king of the giant whale, Amen. Lend me your strength. The 5 evil god's powers came from afar. Charlotte urged the flame knight's spear to soar into the air, penetrated Ishmael's lower abdomen, and came out from his throat. The body that was originally so solid that it could not be broken, under Charlotte's attack, was like a sharp blade cutting through rock, without any resistance. Charlotte pierced through the evil god with one spear, and then passed through the back of Ishmael's head, piercing through the evil god's huge head like a mountain. Charlotte circled in the void and penetrated Ishmael's throat again. The evil god fought back and tried to catch Charlotte, but when he was struggling with Charlotte, one building after another in the Ishmael palace rose from the ground. Soon, the building designated by Emilia had exceeded half of the Ishmael palace. The evil god's whole body shook violently, like a deflated balloon, and began to shrink suddenly. Juno was devouring the 19th bowl of flesh and blood. He was sensitive to the changes in the Ishmael palace. The strongest of the blood clan smiled slightly and said to himself, my student is really interesting. He turned into faint blood light, broke through all obstacles, and disappeared in the black sky in an instant. The next moment, he woke up, looked at his hands, and said lightly, I am one step closer to the god level. From now on, everything in the secular world will have no meaning to me. Only becoming a god is my pursuit. He looked at the sea, and the Holy Light God Kingdom had stopped attacking the Ishmael Palace. The Ishmael Palace has changed its appearance and is gradually shrinking in size, turning into a giant ship that is not inferior to the Dalmabadhus and the Holy Light Kingdom. There is a line of words on both sides of this giant ship, and the 2 lines of words are exactly the same. Both are Emilia. At the same time, Charlotte reappeared on the Holy Light Kingdom. He looked at the Emilia that was transformed into a new legendary battleship. There was an inexplicable expectation in his heart. Charlotte casually released a magic mirror. He looked at Ishmael in the mirror. At the last moment when he left that world, he used his supernatural power, the Mirror Demon. Well, he didn't expect it to be fucking successful. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 506, Bringing a Few Evil Gods Home to Live. Before Charlotte could even feel joy, she heard Emilia's crisp voice, Dad, can I eat this? She saw her little daughter pointing forward, and her eldest son Gareth was suspended in the air. Even though he struggled hard, he was like a fish out of water. How could Charlotte care about the newly captured Mirror Demon? She hurriedly called out, That's your brother Gareth. Emilia glanced at Gareth and asked, Brother? Shouldn't it be a more delicious food? But, Dad, he looks so unnutritious. Charlotte hurriedly shouted, You can't eat him, you have to protect him more. Emilia reluctantly agreed and said, Okay. I'll listen to Dad. She threw Gareth on the bow with disgust and said, Brother, from today on you are the steward of this ship, help me manage the Emilia. Gareth gasped heavily. He had originally boarded the Ishmael Palace, ready to help secretly, but he never expected that the evil Gout's palace suddenly changed its owner, and this owner is so fucking terrifying. Emilia stood on the bow, looking far toward the Holy Light Kingdom. Suddenly, she saw something. Her eyes sparkled. She pointed to a spot of air on the Holy Light Kingdom and said, Dad, this brother looks delicious. Can I eat him? The diary in Charlotte's arms arched fiercely. He put his hand into his arms and took out the Saint Light Kingdom navigation log. He saw a line of words on it, Dad, don't let Emilia eat me. After eating me, she will become something else. Charlotte wiped the sweat from her forehead. What kind of evil god family is this? The little daughter wants to eat her 2 brothers? Well, although these 2 brothers are not from a decent family. But they can't be used as food, right? Amen said that if Emilia eats him, she will become something else. Charlotte believed it to a certain extent. Emilia was very evil. She could hold up the trident of an evil god like Ishmael with one finger. She was so evil. After devouring the palace of Ishmael, she must be stronger. If she let her eat the name of the Holy Light God. Charlotte didn't dare to think about what this little thing would become. Maybe it would give birth to some great evil god. Charlotte said hurriedly, He is your brother, You can't eat him. You can only love him, just like Amin and Brother Gareth will love you. Amelia tilted her head and thought for a while, then said, Brother Gareth is a waste. Brother Amin also wants to eat me. They don't love me. Dad, you are biased. Charlotte was shocked. Normal fathers are biased, which means they hurt the young hearts of their children. He was accused of being biased and might have to face a nezia. Well, nezia is not scary. It's just that the attribute of patricide is too scary. Charlotte said patiently, Dad is not partial. You are all my good children. I hope you can love each other forever. Amelia raised her hands high and said, Dad, let my brothers swear to never hurt me and always love me, and I will believe them. Otherwise, Brother Gareth can still survive. He has no ability to hurt me, and Brother Amin has no chance of survival. Charlotte believed 100% that if there was a chance, Amin would really swallow Amelia. After all, both of them were very evil. He could only communicate with Amin and asked, How about you swear an oath? Amin appeared beside Charlotte at some point, pulling at his clothes, trembling all over, extremely scared. He whispered, You who travel the long river of time, know all mysteries, master extraordinary rituals, and rule the court of fate. I, Amin Mecklin, will never hurt my sister Amelia Mecklin, and will always love her. I am willing to borrow 25 portions of the joy of fate from you in the name of my father. I beg you to protect me and never be hurt by Amelia. Amin's mouth was flat, and he was almost scared to tears. Charlotte was about to cry, because she could feel that the snake of fate really accepted Amin's prayer. He just owed the snake of fate 20 portions of the joy of fate, and in the blink of an eye, Amin, the rebellious son, borrowed another 25 portions. How could he pay it back? He couldn't pay it back at all. Charlotte wanted to cry but had no tears. She thought to herself, should I sacrifice Amin to the serpent of fate to pay off my debt? After Amin swore, Amelia ignored him and jumped around on the newly born Amelia, having a lot of fun. Charlotte solved the big problem of children eating each other and wiped the sweat on her forehead, which was almost like a waterfall. Finally, she had time to check the newly acquired mirror demon. The mirror demon can turn any living creature into a mirror demon and become an assistant. It is usually called the steward of the infinite mirror world. Charlotte just tried it casually at the time and didn't expect it to succeed. However, the wreckage of Ishmael was taken away by Amelia, and his aura plummeted. He could no longer maintain the strength of the evil god level. Now he is just an ordinary holy level steward. Well, it's a little stronger than the old goat. It's probably the 24th level. However, Ishmael has a huge problem. He has died once, and his soul and memory are shattered. Not much is left. Now he looks like an idiot. If Charlotte issues a slightly complicated command, he will not be able to respond correctly. His IQ is probably higher than that of a corgi, but lower than that of a border collie. This is terrible. Charlotte was studying her idiot butler of the infinite mirror world when she heard a familiar voice. Juno smiled and fell from the sky and said, Charlotte, how do you feel about having a daughter? Charlotte remembered the last time Juno asked her not to have this child, and couldn't help saying, Teacher, you advised me not to have children last time. Juno shrugged and said, Last time is last time, this time is this time. Don't you have no way to deal with Ishmael? Letting Amelia be born is not a solution. As for the new problems after Amelia's birth, we will find a way to solve them. Although, it's not easy to solve, I still don't understand what Amelia is and how she exists. Charlotte asked in a low voice, Isn't she an evil god? Juno shook his head and said, It should be. Charlotte was shocked and asked, It should be? What does that mean? Is it possible that she is not an evil god? Juno patted him on the shoulder and said, Well, it may be even more evil. Charlotte glanced at the Amelia, and suddenly she felt that she was not here to challenge the evil god Agneris, but to deal with a few evil gods and go home to live her life. What kind of evil god joke is this? Chapter 507, Memory Manipulation. The new route has not appeared yet. Charlotte is not that anxious. Agneris has not taken back the Ishmael Palace and the Ghost Fleet. It is obvious that he has no more cards. The evil god is not anxious. Why is he anxious? Charlotte passed the 32nd maze. In addition to gaining a daughter, a legendary battleship, more than 900 ghost ships, a mirror demon, and a small harvest, Charlotte also obtained an extra maze rune, Memory Manipulation. It can tamper with, erase, add, distort, and strengthen the memory of living beings. However, the memory manipulated by this ability has a time limit. Most people will slowly restore their original memory as time goes by, but if combined with other maze powers, such as the shielding time and the Book of Years, it can permanently tamper with a memory within a certain range. This ability is very interesting. Charlotte has tried it. With his rank 18 strength, memory manipulation is almost completely ineffective against saints. For the same rank transcendence, it only takes a few seconds to 10 seconds. However, for transcendence of lower ranks, the effect is extremely obvious. Those below rank 10 can even maintain wrong memories for several months. Charlotte waited patiently while getting familiar with the new ability. About 7 or 8 days later, a new route finally appeared again. Charlotte had just handed the fleet to Juno, and the legendary warships became 2, with more than 900 ghost ships and 3 new members, Teacher, the eldest son, and the eldest daughter. Well, there is also an Ishmael. He can also be counted as not a human. Charlotte didn't need to let Juno and Gareth leave. The Holy Light Kingdom and Emilia led the ghost fleet one after the other and continued their journey. Just as Charlotte expected, he passed through 7 consecutive mazes without any obstacles, almost equivalent to encountering no resistance, until the 40th maze, which was a little challenging. He encountered the evil Gadarena again. It was still a deserted island, and it was still a city that could not be turned into a maze. With the experience from last time, Charlotte did not violently demolish the ruined city. Instead, he sent out ghost crew members to search carefully and soon found the entrance to the underground city. This time, only Charlotte could enter the evil Gadarena. Charlotte had had this experience once before, so he was no longer so worried. He made sufficient preparations and jumped down. However, this time was different from the last time. After Charlotte entered the evil Gadarena and stepped on the ground, he appeared directly on a battlefield. There were people fighting everywhere, blood and fire intertwined, and corpses were everywhere. Everyone seemed to be crazy and only knew how to keep waving weapons. Charlotte improved his spirituality and scanned the surroundings. He did not notice anything strange, but he felt even more strange. Charlotte kicked away a soldier who rushed over with a casual kick, dodged a shot, snatched the opponent's weapon, and knocked the spearman to the ground. But just after he knocked down 2 people, 7 or 8 soldiers rushed over without caring about their own lives. Charlotte couldn't help but shout, "Who are you? Why are you fighting?" No one answered him, only the sword responded to him. Charlotte didn't want to kill people indiscriminately, so he simply threw down his weapon, performed the light agility X5, easily avoided the siege of these soldiers, and randomly chose a direction to run all the way. In the evil Gadarena, there is no way to take out all the extraordinary weapons, so you can only use your own strength. However, the light agility X5 is enough on the battlefield. All the soldiers who attacked Charlotte couldn't get even a trace of their clothes, and he quickly rushed out of the battlefield. Charlotte randomly chose a big tree in the wild, jumped onto the tree top, and then had a bird's eye view of the battlefield, and a little bit of the situation on the battlefield was clear. There were 2 armies. The commander of one of them, with his personal guards, stood on a hill and continuously sent out messengers to control the army. The commander of the other side led a small team and rushed to the most dangerous place. However, he was fighting in person and had no way to command his subordinates. He could only let his subordinates fight on their own. Although the commander who led the team to fight personally was extremely brave, he completely gave up the command of the army in order to display his personal bravery. Therefore, although his army was obviously larger in number, better trained, and better armed, it was the disadvantaged party. After a few minutes, Charlotte was sure of one thing except for the 2 commanders: their soldiers were not human. Humans are emotional animals. But the soldiers of the 2 commanders completely obeyed orders, did not count casualties, and never retreated. No matter how tragically their comrades died in battle, they were indifferent. Whether it was the Earth before Charlotte traveled through time or the old continent she traveled through, there had never been such an army. It's the maze guards. Charlotte made a judgment, and he couldn't help but complain. Even if it's the maze guards, you can't be so wasteful. Right, these maze guards are all elite. Charlotte's face turned pale immediately, and he didn't dare to think about it anymore, but there was a voice in his heart that told him clearly that only he was different from others. Charlotte's maze guards were either enemies or people who had committed unforgivable crimes, such as human trafficking and cannibalism. He would never turn ordinary subordinates into maze guards, but other maze masters did not have this psychological burden. If they wanted, they could turn everyone in a city into maze guards. Charlotte suddenly figured out one thing: why the evil gods were rampant in the New World, But the evil gods in the old world were suppressed by the righteous gods. It was not a problem of evil gods and righteous gods, but the people of the two continents were different. The people of the old world received traditional education, and most of the secret methods of cultivation were inherited from the 9 righteous gods and came from universities. The other mainstream was the secret methods created by the great philosophers of mankind, which also mostly came from universities. Very few people practiced the art of evil gods. The new world is full of evil gods because people gave up the good gods and chose the evil gods in order to gain power as quickly as possible. It is not because the evil gods are too strong and the good gods are not strong enough. This is the choice of mankind. Charlotte remembered again that the great priest Ogsredin said, "What can the new world rely on to fight against the evil gods? Have more children." What a cruel choice. A thought suddenly came out of the diary in Charlotte's arms. Charlotte Mecklen is challenging the 40th maze. This is Mosul, an isolated landmass. Mosul has 18 towns, and the mayor of each town is the evil god candidate of the maze evil god Agmaris. They must fight for the only quota through war, and the loser will become the vassal of the winner. They fought each other and forged a blood feud. Charlotte Mecklen, please let Mosul restore order, and let Mosul reappear in the world. Bug in the evil god arena. Charlotte held his chin and fell into deep thought. The 40th level maze was not too difficult, but too simple. Although he was alone, he believed that with the strength of the 18th level, it would not be difficult to sweep the 18 towns of Mosul. Charlotte always felt that Agmaris was playing tricks on him, and this evil god arena was definitely not normal. Although he didn't know much about the evil god arena, he knew one detail, that is, the evil god pre-selection or the evil god candidate was not Agmaris pre-selection. Agmaris's candidate was that all evil gods had pre-selectors and all evil gods had candidates, but Mosul actually only had Agmaris evil god candidate. This was too strange. Charlotte had too little information, and he didn't know what Agmaris was going to do to him. However, he decided to act first. There were 2 evil god candidates fighting here, and their cities must be empty. Charlotte was going to pick one to occupy. As long as he could capture a city, Charlotte would have the confidence that he could continuously recruit troops until he could sweep across the entire Mosul. Charlotte tried the magic flame horse and succeeded easily, but the magic flame horse he summoned was obviously not the one he had subdued before. Charlotte did not care about this detail, and climbed on the magic flame horse and headed straight for the nearest town. The town closest to the battlefield had almost no residents. Charlotte had planned to have a battle, but when he broke into the town, he felt the town was dilapidated. The streets were deserted, even more desolate than Machupi at the beginning. Machupi at least had some crows, rats and so on. Charlotte got off the magic flame horse, stretched out his hand and pressed it on the ground. He used the power of the maze and did not encounter any resistance. In just half an hour, he turned the town into a maze. By the way, he also knew that there were more than 20 maze guards in the town. When he summoned this group of maze guards, he couldn't help but feel miserable. Almost all of these 20 or so maze guards were disabled. The only healthy person was a child of a few months old. His mother was blind in one eye and had several scars on her body. They were all like zombies. Although the maze guards themselves were evil, Charlotte had never seen such indifferent behavior in his maze guards. Most of his maze guards were quite normal. Charlotte hadn't felt it just now, but now he knew that the evil god candidates in Mosul had squeezed out all the potential of the population of this small land mass in order to compete for the only victory. If Charlotte hadn't appeared, there might be a winner here, but the price was the loss of population. Charlotte sighed and let these 20 or so maze guards disperse on their own. He didn't plan to rely on them to fight. He checked his own abilities. Charlotte suddenly found a bug. He couldn't bring in any extraordinary weapons from the evil god arena. But his personal abilities were not limited. Well, Charlotte suddenly discovered that he had an ability called Mirror Monster, and it was actually working. He summoned Ishmarin immediately. Ishmarin was still dumbfounded, except for the trident in his hand that allowed him to maintain a little of the last dignity of the evil god. From any angle, he was just an ordinary saint. And he had a broken head. Although Gareth's soul and memory were also damaged, at least he looked normal. People who didn't know the details couldn't tell that he was actually an incomplete person. Ishmarin didn't look normal at all. Charlotte touched the evil god, which was now just like an ordinary person, except that it looked a little ferocious. She said, "I have a wonderful method called the Beast God Transformation Technique. Now I will teach you. You can transform into human appearance, so as not to scare people when you go out. Eichmann did not react at all, but after Charlotte taught him the Beast God transformation technique, Eichmann quickly turned around and transformed into a middle-aged man who looked like Jackie Chan, with a steady temperament and affinity. Charlotte stretched out a finger and touched Eichmann's forehead, slightly tampering with the memory of this evil god. Eichmann is a family servant of the Mecklin family. He has watched Gareth Mecklin, Amin Mecklin, and Amelia Mecklin grow up. He is loyal to the Mecklin couple, proficient in necromancy, painting, and mathematics. He is a colleague of the Golden Goat Roth, Black Dragon, Vigo, and others. They have a close personal relationship and often play snake cards together. In order to complete the character setting, Charlotte stuffed this evil god with a full set of mathematical knowledge from primary school to high school to graduate school. As for whether he can understand it, that's another matter. After infusing a large amount of memory, Eichmann's eyes became much more lively, and a humble oriental smile appeared on his face. He could even stutter and say, "Master Charlotte Mecklin, what do you need?" Charlotte smiled slightly and said, "There will be a battle later, help me capture them all alive." Eichmann bowed and gave an imperial salute. Charlotte felt much happier. He had just seen Amelia rob the Eichmann palace and tried it casually. He didn't expect to find a place in the evil god arena. Let me ask, with Eichmann in hand, who can be the evil god candidate? In the evening, a group of remnants returned to the city. Charlotte gave an order, and Eichmann took out his trident. He just pointed to the sky from a distance, and these people walked into the town step by step involuntarily. Charlotte was stunned. He knew that Eichmann was actually an evil god, but he didn't expect that even though his power had declined to the level of the saint, he could still use such a casual large-scale control technique. Although most of these people were ordinary people, only the evil god candidate was a transcendent, but his level was not high, but this move was too evil god. Anyway, Charlotte couldn't do it. He easily transformed these people into maze guards, including the evil god candidate. So far, Charlotte had his first town. Although the population here was sparse due to the abuse, Charlotte couldn't help but sigh. In the city he controlled, everyone lived and worked in peace and contentment, and business was prosperous. He even abolished taxes, and the residents' satisfaction was always high. He couldn't understand. They were also controlling a city. How could these evil god candidates make the city look like this? What Charlotte didn't know was that when he turned an evil god candidate into maze guard, the rest of the evil god candidates got a hint, and each of them was terrified. Chapter 509, The Evil God Paradox. The 18 candidates of the evil god in Mosul have been fighting for several months, and they are still in a stage where no one can do anything to anyone. After all, everyone knows that there can only be one winner in this evil god arena, and no one will trust others. This is also the fundamental reason why the war is extremely cruel and is about to wipe out the population of Mosul. The evil god actually needs faith, but the evil god does not care about the population and will wantonly destroy the population. This is a serious evil god paradox. Charlotte captured a city. He first collected intelligence and learned about the various situations in Mosul from the maze guards under his command, especially the mouth of the evil god candidate. He immediately made a choice to attack directly without any strategy. Well, there's Eichmann. What strategy do we need? Charlotte made a little rest, and did not even lead any of his subordinates. He only took Eichmann and went to the second town. The evil god candidate in Mosul was just surprised when he received a notification that the first candidate had withdrawn from the arena. But when the notification of the second evil god candidate's withdrawal appeared, everyone panicked. They sent out the maze guards to contact others and find out the situation. Not long after these messengers were sent out, they received the news that the third evil god candidate had withdrawn. For the first time, Charlotte felt a refreshing feeling of going invincible without any strategy. But it was very regrettable that when he attacked the fourth town, the evil god candidate ran away in advance. The Mosul landmass is very small, and the distance between the 18 towns will not exceed a day for ordinary people to travel. Before the era of large-scale industry, there would be no such dense towns in reality, because without modern agriculture, it would not be able to support such a dense population. Although Charlotte also noticed this detail, he did not take it too seriously. As one town after another was pushed flat, he soon encountered the last resistance. When he flattened the 8th town, 13 evil god candidates formed a coalition and sniped Charlotte head-on. The two sides made contact for a while, and soon a fierce battle broke out. Charlotte didn't do much, and saw Ishmael slaughtering the evil god candidates one after another. These evil god candidates who had not yet entered the holy level were no match for Ishmael, who was once an evil god. After defeating the coalition head-on, Charlotte spent another 3 days to occupy 18 towns and turned them all into mazes, and then he finally knew what conspiracy Agmaris had played on him. He restored the order of Majuri and mastered this maze, so he naturally had the ability to bring it back to the world. Charlotte did the same. When Majuri was reconnected to the world, he appeared in the Christopher region of the New World. Yes, it was Christopher who first arrived in the New World. The place where he landed in the New World was in the middle of the New World. The New World was also divided into 2 parts, North and South, just like the Old World, but it was not separated by a strait, but connected by a small piece of land. This piece of land was the Christopher region, and Majuri was the narrowest part of the Christopher region. On its left and right sides were 2 seas. Charlotte was sent out of the Agar Sea by Agmaris last time, and this time he was sent directly to the New World by this evil god. Moreover, this time, he had no ship. Charlotte now only had Ishmael as his subordinate, as well as 18 towns and less than 10,000 maze guards. Charlotte had to go back to the Agar Sea and find his fleet before he could start the maze challenge again. Charlotte looked out at the sea, feeling extremely depressed. He needed a boat to go out to sea, but the towns in Mosul were all small towns with a population of several thousand, and there was no shipbuilding industry at all. In addition, the 18 candidates for evil gods had crushed the population here. The remaining population was less than 1/10 of the peak of Mosul. Even the basic operation of society was difficult to maintain. Most of them were daily occupations, such as farmers, bakers, craftsmen, workers who repaired various tools, and merchants traveling between towns. All of them died in the dam arena. The rest were almost all old, weak, women and children, who could only do the most superficial work, and might not even be able to continue ordinary agricultural farming. If there was no strong leader, these people might die in large numbers soon. Charlotte also thought about letting Ishmael carry him and fly to the Agal Sea, but if he left here, it was likely that these 18 towns would soon be unable to support themselves. Once the maze of these towns was broken by others, he would be equivalent to failing the challenge. Agmaris gave him a big problem. Faced with such a situation, Charlotte was silent for a long time, but she finally thought of a solution. He said to Ishmael, "Go to the Sea of Agulls and tell teacher Juno to hand over all the ghost fleets to you and bring them to Majuri. Let the kingdom of Holy Light and Emilia wait for me there." After receiving the order, Ishmael immediately flew away. Standing on the beach of Majuri, Charlotte couldn't help stroking her chin and whispered, "What kind of trouble has Agmaris encountered? He has actually fallen to the point of using such a trick to deal with a mortal. What level have the evil gods in the New World fought to? Who are they fighting against now? Are there any evil gods forming an alliance with each other? This is really curious." Charlotte waited in Majuri for 2 days. She knew that Ishmael would not come back so soon, and he would bring back a ghost fleet, which would take even longer. So she screened her maze guards and barely picked out 700 or 800 soldiers who could still fight. She tried to attack the south of the continent. Majuri's social order, economy, and population collapsed across the board. Because of too many wars, all supplies were exhausted, and even food was gone. If they wanted to survive, there were only 2 ways: get support from others or expand on their own. Charlotte believed that no one would support Majuri on the New World, especially this kind of support that was almost impossible to get in return. Then they could only try to expand. Black Column, which borders Majuri, is 5 or 6 times larger than Majuri, with a population 3 or 4 times larger. It has 7 medium and large cities, and also has a port that Majuri does not have. Charlotte's first target of attack was the port of Black Column, Port of Lazarus. Port of Lazarus was in a panic. Majuri suddenly disappeared, turning the land that originally connected the North and South New World into a vast ocean, which had already made the people nearby panic. I don't know which evil god took action, and Majuri suddenly appeared again, which was even more terrifying. Now he suddenly attacked Port of Lazarus? The residents of this port city were worried about the invasion of some evil god. Chapter 510, Bilingual Banner, Evil God Formula. Charlotte did not show up, but the new route did. Juno could not help but worry about his student. Of course, he would not rashly embark on the new route and waited patiently for a few days. On this day, Juno had just woken up from meditation when he sensed the breath of Ishmael. This evil god descended from the sky and handed him a letter when he saw Juno. Charlotte was worried that the evil god would make mistakes in the message, so she did not dare to let him dictate. In the letter, he told his experience again. After reading the letter, Juno was really stunned. He smiled and handed all the ghost ships to Ishmael. After Ishmael led the ghost fleet to set off, Juno Arthur did not continue to wait for Charlotte to return, but with a look of excitement, he commanded the Holy Light Kingdom and Emilia to sail into the new route. Charlotte chose the port of Lazarus Cardanus for a compelling reason. He had asked Ishmael to transfer the ghost fleet, but there was no suitable port in Mosul, and the ghost ship also needed a port to dock. There are 2 large ports in the Black Column region, and the port of Lazarus is the closest to Mashri. Charlotte led 700 or 800 people and marched to the outside of the city wall of the port of Lazarus. He asked his maze guards to put up a big flag. This big flag was very crude, just a few thin tree trunks connected together, with a piece of white cloth hung on it. In order to make it clear to the people in the city, Charlotte also fixed the upper and lower ends of the white cloth. The big flag was written in Fars and Englima: surrender and no killing, stubborn resistance and massacre. The currency circulating in the New World is mainly Englima's gold pound, shillings and pence, Fars is iku, fort, and centimans. The language is also mainly Englima and Fars. The former is more popular than the currency, and more than 60% of the population in the New World understands Englima. These 2 sentences are concise and to the point, and there is no ambiguity. This bilingual flag was enough for 90% of the residents of Lazaro Cardanus to understand what was written on it. The residents of this port city were extremely panicked because of this flag. Some even refused the order of General Duma, who was in charge of the city, and refused to go to the city to resist. The New World was full of immigrants. The main enemy was the evil gods, not humans, and the social structure was completely different from that of the Old World. When encountering danger, cities were simply unable to help each other. After all, facing the attack of the evil gods, no matter how many humans came, they would die. Such a living environment could not establish a country at all. Except for the overseas territories of several empires in the Old World, they were all autonomous city-states or city-state alliances. In the face of an irresistible enemy, the cities in the New World were more willing to choose to surrender rather than fight to the death. They valued their families, relatives and their own lives more. Although General Duma was not a senior military strategist, he had never led troops to fight even after taking charge of this port city. The Black Column region spanned 2 seas, with developed trade and very few wars, but he also had some common sense. Charlotte only brought 700 or 800 people, and their equipment was simple. It was impossible for him to attack a strong city like Port Lazaro Cardanus. However, he mobilized several times, and the residents of Port Lazaro Cardanus were frightened by the banner of no killing for surrender, massacre for resistance. They were generally resistant to war. In the minds of these residents, it made no difference whether Duma was the lord of the city or those outside the city. General Duma had no choice but to convene a temporary city meeting. In most cities in the New World, the highest authority was the city meeting, unlike the Old World where the highest authority must be the royal family. Charlotte raised the flag and asked his maze guards to shout loudly, and he was a little bored. After all, he never thought that with just such a big flag, he could make the enemy surrender. This kind of battle has never been fought since Charlotte crossed over. After all, the enemy surrenders at the side of the wind, and it really needs the main general to have a little kingly spirit. He doesn't have this. Charlotte thought to herself, should we launch a feint attack to see how the residents of Lazaro Cardanus port react, but I only have 700 or 800 soldiers who can fight. What if the feint attack causes too many casualties? Although the victory or defeat is determined by extraordinary combat power, ordinary soldiers are also very useful and cannot be squandered. Charlotte felt sorry for the 18 evil god candidates who had caused the population of Mosul to decline in order to win. Those people should not have died in vain. Just as Charlotte was preparing to show off for a while and then withdraw, and find another way to attack Lazaro Cardanus port, she saw the city gates suddenly open, and a team walked out calmly, and also picked the white flag. Although both sides raised the white flag, the meaning was completely different. Charlotte was still stagnant for a while, and then he led his army forward. When General Duma saw Charlotte, he said, "The port of Lazaro Cardanus hopes for peace. We are willing to surrender, But please promise not to harm any residents." Charlotte agreed and ordered Duma and the city council members who surrendered out of the city to be tied up, and then led the army into the port city. He really didn't expect that when he was at the gates of the city, the port of Lazzaro Cardenas surrendered without a fight. Although Charlotte was still a little unbelievable about this. How could it be so easy to capture a city? But there was no hesitation. After entering the port city, he first disbanded the city defense army and the city council and other original management agencies of the port of Lazzaro Cardenas. When the city residents protested, Charlotte immediately announced to the whole city that the dissolution of these agencies was to exempt taxes, which immediately reversed the momentum and gained great support. Charlotte was now a political expert. He took advantage of the situation, abolished the original decree, issued a new decree, formed a Chamber of Commerce alliance, and re-established the Knights of Favonius, pulling out a team of more than 1,000 people. This military adventure made Charlotte taste the sweetness. He led the newly formed Knights of Favonius, with a raging wind and fire, and swept through nearby cities continuously. At this time, Eichmann led the Ghost Fleet and had left the Agar Sea and began to cross the Sea of Gold. The sea between the Agar Sea and the New World was called the Sea of Gold. And the west coast of the New World was also called the Golden Coastline, because several adventurers in the past soon discovered gold mines in a coastal city after arriving in the New World, and the Golden Sea and the Golden Coastline got their names from this. This evil god floats in the sky every day, guiding the Ghost Fleet's direction, and at the same time, he keeps muttering about addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, quadratic functions, Pythagorean cosine, subset elements. His brain is filled with all kinds of mathematical knowledge. As long as he calms down a little, he will automatically generate a test paper. If he doesn't finish it, his HUD will buzz and he can't have a moment of peace. This is Charlotte's fault. As a math teacher, he has to give this evil god hundreds of math test papers. Originally, this was not a big deal. These test papers would only occupy a very small part of a normal person's memory, but Eichmann's memory loss was too severe, resulting in the main memory of his brain being all these test papers. Chapter 511, Charlotte's arrival in Black Columbus. Charlotte knew that the newly formed Knights of Favonius, although they also had a group of extraordinary people, such as the candidates for the evil god, General Duma and several councillors of the port of Lazzaro Cardenas City Conference, were not stable internally. Most people did not have a high degree of recognition for this team, especially General Duma and those city councillors, who were simply dissatisfied. They went out of the city to surrender, but in the end, look at what treatment Charlotte gave them. They were tied up directly. And then they were deprived of all their powers and thrown into the army to fight with the army? If they were not worried about their personal safety and the safety of their families, they would definitely protest. He also knew that victory could solve all problems. Charlotte first swept through the towns near the port of Lazzaro Cardenas. In just a few days, it swept through 7 or 8 small towns and expanded the Knights of Favonius to more than 3,000 people. When Charlotte was ready to attack another port city in the Black Column area, he received a piece of news that was not easy for him to accept for a while. 3 of the 7 major cities in the Black Column area chose to surrender without a fight. Well, in fact, there was another piece of news at the same time. The 3 cities that were not prepared to surrender formed a city-state military alliance to resist Charlotte's attack. These 3 cities were all guarded by high-level extraordinary people, and they believed that they were not afraid of Charlotte, an outsider. In fact, Charlotte could understand that the 3 cities formed an alliance to resist him as an outsider. On the contrary, he could not understand why 3 cities chose to surrender. He did not act very strong. He did not have strong talents under his command. Most of the officers in the team were either from Mashiri or from the port of Lazarus Cardenas. Why did 3 cities surrender? Although Charlotte was puzzled, she acted quickly. She led the Knights of Favonius to take over the surrendered cities and selected a group of young men from each city to join the Knights of Favonius. Even though he had some political skills, it would take some time to digest the 3 cities without enough helpers, and he could not take military action. Although the other 3 cities formed an alliance, it was impossible to send troops quickly. They needed to hold several meetings to discuss various miscellaneous matters. Who would provide how many people? Who would provide how much supplies? How to divide the spoils after the war? Who would command the battle, etc. The problems must be solved. After the 2 military groups formed a confrontation, a short peace appeared instead. No one took any fierce action, and neither side even declared war. The city-state military alliance held a meeting for more than 10 days before solving various problems. When the three coalition forces finally set out, Ishmaelin appeared in the waters outside the port of Lazaro Cardenas with a ghost fleet. When this ghost fleet appeared, the residents of the port of Lazaro Cardenas were terrified beyond measure. The fleet of more than 900 ghost ships is enough to sweep across almost all coastal cities in the New World. Except for the super-large cities with holy orders, ordinary cities are simply vulnerable. There are at least dozens of ghost crew members on each ghost ship. And the crew members on most ghost ships exceed 100 people. Even in landing operations, it is easy to form a ghost army of more than 100,000. The residents of Lazaro Cardenas port only think that this is a natural disaster of the undead and the end of Lazaro Cardenas port, and they are ready to flee. At this time, Charlotte resolutely stepped forward and made a big propaganda that this fleet is nothing to fear. He can protect the people of Lazaro Cardenas port. And in order to show that he has the confidence to protect everyone, he announced that he is willing to use fair prices to purchase the real estate held by the residents who are ready to flee. Although Charlotte's move has increased the trust of a very small number of residents, it has not helped the overall situation and has not reversed the trend of residents fleeing from Lazaro Cardenas port. However, most of the residents who fled chose to sell the real estate they could not take away to Charlotte before leaving. Charlotte really kept her promise and invested in the purchase of the real estate. Almost everyone was very satisfied with this big deal. The news that a ghost fleet appeared in the sea off the port of Lazaro Cardenas soon spread to several nearby areas through the fleeing crowd. The city-state military alliance quickly learned that there would be nearly 1,000 ghost ships attacking the port of Lazaro Cardenas. They immediately stopped their offensive after hearing this terrifying news. The military leaders of the three cities immediately held a meeting, but how could such a thing be solved by a meeting? Ishmaelin was very considerate and waited until most of the residents of the port of Lazaro Cardenas had fled before slowly entering the port. Charlotte led the warriors of the Knights of Favonius to the top of the port and made a gesture of fighting to the death. The residents of the New World were used to being played by the evil gods. Those who were willing to stay were not so panicked. It was impossible not to be afraid, but at least they could complete Charlotte's defense instructions. Although there were no ancient magic ghost warships, the more than 900 ghost ships were still as powerful as demons, with a spirit of devouring all living things. General Duma looked at this ghost fleet, and his back was full of cold sweat. He couldn't help but suggest to Charlotte, "You'd better run away. We can't fight against such a powerful evil god at all. If we stay, we will just die. If you can lead the people in the city to escape, I am willing to help you." Duma's words made Charlotte look at him with admiration, and she smiled and said, "You are a good person, but not a good commander." He added in his heart, "Actually, I am not either. We can definitely win this battle. Please believe me." How could Duma know that this ghost fleet belonged to Charlotte? He didn't believe Charlotte's nonsense at all. But at this time, Charlotte still chose to fight instead of running away, and did not stop anyone from leaving. She was also willing to spend a lot of money to buy real estate. She actually won some respect from him. Duma sighed and thought to himself, "Forget it, I will accompany him to fight these ghosts. At the last moment, I will run away again, which is worthy of him." I surrendered outside the city, and he asked people to tie me up. For such a person, I can do nothing to him. Duma was preparing himself mentally. And he saw Charlotte suddenly clapping his hands, and several extraordinary people worked together to move several huge stones over and stack them up. Charlotte jumped up, stood on the high platform with huge stones, and shouted at the ghost fleet on the sea, "I am the man of destiny. Warriors from the sea, submit to me and offer your loyalty." More than 90% of the new members of the Knights of Favonius looked at him as if he was a fool. But the next second, they saw countless ghost crew members walking onto the deck, kneeling on one knee, roaring, and offering their loyalty to Charlotte Mecklen standing on the boulders. It was at this moment. All the members of the New World of the Knights of Favonius were shocked beyond words, and the seeds of fear were firmly planted in their hearts. Decades later, this scene was painted by a painter into an oil painting worth nearly 1,000 gold ecu, which was passed down to later generations. Charlotte King over Black Columbus. Chapter 512, Break. 99-story maze. Nearly 1,000 ghost ships surrendered. The shock of this scene was deeply imprinted in the memory of all those present. Decades later, they would still be intoxicated when talking about this scene, and they would show their wholehearted admiration for Charlotte. After Charlotte finished pretending to be powerful, she immediately ordered Ishmael to dispatch 30,000 ghost crew members to the shore, because there was a war to be fought. Countless ghost crew members jumped off the ship, crossed the sea, and climbed ashore. Even though they knew that they had surrendered to Charlotte, this scene still frightened the residents of the port of Lazarus Cardenas. Charlotte also knew that this group of ghost crew members could not be allowed to stay in this port city, which would cause panic among ordinary residents. Let them pass through the port of Lazarus Cardenas directly, and mix with ordinary members of the Knights of Favonius to form a huge army, heading in the direction of the city-state military alliance. Charlotte's army soon collided with the army of the city-state military alliance. When the armies of both sides appeared on the battlefield, the commanders of the city-state military alliance fell silent when they saw the ghost crews all over the mountains. When Ishmael floated into the sky, the three city lords of the coalition were pale. Tintenherge, the city lord of Tlaquepaque, asked in a low voice, "Do we have any other way besides summoning the evil god?" The other two city lords hesitated for a moment and said together, "Surrender." Tintenherge sighed deeply and said, "Let's ask someone to write a surrender document and sign it together. I will personally send it to Mr. Charlotte Mecklin." The other two city lords looked around, and all the soldiers were pale, with no color in their faces. Not only did Charlotte suddenly surrender a terrifying ghost fleet, but she also had a saint, and the bilingual flag she had raised before also weighed heavily on the hearts of everyone in the coalition. They had originally doubted that Charlotte might not slaughter after the victory, but now no one dared to doubt it. After all, what cruel things could a person who controlled the ghost army not do? Soon the surrender document was written, and the three city lords signed their names. As expected, Tintenherge personally came to see Charlotte and respectfully presented the surrender document of the city-state military alliance. Charlotte did not want to fight. After all, there was no hatred between the two sides. He read the document, smiled slightly, and said, "If you are willing to surrender, I am not willing to start a war." Seeing that Charlotte was indeed as rumored, he was quite lenient to the surrendered people. Tintenherge was overjoyed. He complimented Charlotte a few words and was about to leave. Charlotte hurried back to the Sea of Aglers to continue the labyrinth trial. He attacked Black Column because the population of Mosheri had completely collapsed and could not maintain normal social operation. It might be attacked by the army of a certain city-state at once, and Mosheri would be gone, and the road to challenge Agmaris would be interrupted. Therefore, he did not intend to take care of the emotions of these surrendered people, and asked Ishmael to bring thousands of ghost crew members to follow Tintenherge, intending to take over the entire Black Column as soon as possible. Tintenherge did not dare to refuse. All the forces in the Christopher region have set their sights on the Black Column area. They all want to know what Charlotte will do next. If Charlotte continues to attack other areas, then everyone will be prepared, but soon the city-state lords in other parts of the Christopher region will be relieved. Charlotte took over Black Column, abolished all taxes, established a chamber of commerce, amended the decree, and selected strong men to join the Knights of Favonius. In a short period of time, she won the unanimous favor of most residents. Without taxes, the lower-class residents' lives suddenly became easier, as if a mountain was removed from their heads. The middle-class residents suddenly found that life was safer, the streets were cleaner, and even convenient public carriages appeared, and their lives were completely renewed. Even many wealthy residents felt that it was easier to do business, without worrying about robbery, extortion, being disrupted by others, not getting the right goods, and not being able to collect the payment. With the care and protection of the Chamber of Commerce, it was easier to accumulate wealth than before, but the losses were reduced. After doing these things, Charlotte left Hekelin, and even left Ishmael behind. After learning that Charlotte had left, the city-state lords of the Christopher region all believed that he was the spokesperson of a certain evil god. This sudden action was ordered by the evil god they believed in. Since he had left, everyone kept a tacit understanding and did not take any action. Ishmael carried Charlotte on his back and soon found the deserted island where he disappeared. After seeing the new route, Charlotte still let Ishmael carry her and continued to challenge. He soon saw the 41st maze. This maze had been completely broken by someone, and he only needed to make it a maze to quietly complete this challenge. Carried by Ishmael, Charlotte continued to advance all the way, but he never encountered any obstacles. The mazes in front of him were all destroyed. Apart from making the undefended city a maze, he had nothing else to do. 42, 43, 50, 60, 70 mazes. When Charlotte found the 99th maze, he finally saw the Holy Light God Kingdom and the Emilia again. At the same time, he also saw the evil god level battle again. A palace floating on the sea, surrounded by countless corridors suspended on the sea surface. Each corridor has countless warriors, who are fighting desperately against the attacks of the Holy Light God Kingdom and the Emilia. Amabella was completely gone, and countless branches grew out of the bottom of the Holy Light God Kingdom. Under Juno's control, it became the main force of the attack. On the Emilia, the little Emilia Mecklen showed amazing momentum and kept sending out various spells. Every strike could make the Agmiris labyrinth floating on the sea shake violently. I don't know how many warriors guarding this evil god labyrinth were annihilated. Charlotte knew along the way who broke through the 99 layers of the maze. It was his teacher Juno and his eldest daughter Emilia Mecklen who joined forces to handle this big thing. Obviously, Agmiris may be in real trouble now. The last labyrinth it controlled was not only not able to gain any advantage under the attack of the Holy Light Kingdom and Emilia, but was even somewhat dwarfed. Ishmael brought Charlotte and stepped onto the Holy Light Kingdom. When Charlotte saw Juno, she asked, "Teacher, why did you do it yourself?" Juno smiled and said, "I have a feeling that if we don't speed up, we may not be able to use knives and forks to eat the most delicious parts of Agmiris. He can only use less than 1% of his power now. It's the best time to kill the god." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 513, Little Bitch, Leave My Father. Charlotte asked in a low voice, "How is Amabella?" Juno said lightly, "I don't know, but she should be seriously injured and can only provide very weak strength at present." Charlotte looked at Emilia again, who was fighting excitedly. He had some strange feelings for this eldest daughter. Charlotte knew that this kind of father-daughter relationship should not be taken seriously, but he did have an inexplicable concern. He couldn't help but ask one more question, "How is Emilia?" Juno smiled slightly and said, "She is much more talented in the Blood Clan's power words than you." Charlotte was surprised and said, "You taught her the Blood Clan's power words?" Juno shook his head and said, "It can't be said that I taught her. She should have such power by nature. Don't forget that Amabella is the biological daughter of Pendragon Arthur, the ancestor of the Arthur family. She is one of the 19 descendants created by Pendragon through the first embrace. And Emilia has the purest blood of Amabella. She is born to be the top blood clan." Charlotte took a deep breath. He almost forgot this relationship. Emilia is indeed the purest blood clan. But he always felt that this eldest daughter was obviously different from normal blood clans. Anyway, she is different. Emilia had seen Charlotte a long time ago. She waited for a while, but Charlotte didn't come to her. She pouted and couldn't help shouting, "Dad, why don't you come to see Emilia? I can't leave this ship and can't go over. Why don't you come over?" Charlotte could only say goodbye to Juno in a hurry, and still let Ishmael take her to the Emilia. The little girl was filled with joy when she saw her father and threw herself into Charlotte's arms, extremely happy. Charlotte was embarrassed for a moment, then hugged Emilia and whispered, "I was sent to the New World by Agmiris, and it took a lot of effort to get back." Emilia shouted, "Agmiris is so abominable. Dad, I will help Grandpa Juno kill him." Charlotte couldn't help but ask, "What did Grandpa Juno teach you?" Emilia said, "The Bloodline's power words. I have mastered all 261 spells." Isn't Emilia great? Charlotte had only mastered a few of the Bloodline's power words. When she heard that her daughter had mastered all 261 spells of the Bloodline's power words, she was no longer surprised, but horrified. He now understood why the teacher said, "It can't be considered that he taught me." He whispered, "Emilia is great. Dad has only mastered 2 or 3 of them." Emilia was immediately delighted and whispered, "I actually hid it from Grandpa Juno. I also know other Blood Clan spells, such as your Bloody Glory." Charlotte was not shocked this time, but horrified. When Emilia was born, he did feel that his power and memory were absorbed, but he didn't expect such serious consequences. Emilia actually knew Bloody Glory? This little guy. It really doesn't look like an evil god. He is much more evil than an evil god. Charlotte whispered, "Dad will help you." Emilia stretched out her hand and grabbed it, and Charlotte felt her body lighten, and she was in that extraordinary world again. This time, There were 3 huge palaces, crashing in the endless black sky. The Agmerus labyrinth, just like in the real world, showed a decadent trend. Charlotte tried to use the power of the Holy Light Kingdom, and sure enough, the other 4 forces were all normal. But Amabella's power was so weak that she seemed to have fallen into deep sleep. Charlotte was inexplicably relieved. He didn't want to face this divine creature. Although in Amabella's mind, the 2 already had 2 children, a boy and a girl, but Charlotte really knew that these 3 were not human. They were all very evil, hiding countless secrets, which he still couldn't understand. Before Charlotte could find the blood spirit, he felt a slippery body sticking to his back, which scared him into a sweat. A soft voice sounded in his mind, "Amabella is finally gone, and you took me home. What on earth do you want to do? No matter what you want to do, just do it." A snake's tail coiled around his body. Charlotte dared not move. He didn't know how he had provoked the sea snake Vasuji. He seemed a little excited. When Amabella was not around and fell into deep sleep, he was unusually active. Charlotte didn't know what the mentality of this ocean overlord level monster was. He was not Sushion, so he wouldn't do it. Charlotte forced herself to be spiritual and shouted, "Please don't misunderstand me. I just want to repair the name of the Holy Light God Kingdom." Vasuji smiled softly and charmingly. A snake's tail coiled around Charlotte's body, and the whole person was almost on Charlotte's back. A pair of hands went around Charlotte's neck and kept breathing in his ears. "You humans are hypocritical. You deliberately let Amabella give birth to a child. You know that once she gives birth to a child, she will fall into deep sleep and will not wake up for a long time. Letting him give birth to a child is extremely dangerous. It may even kill him and you. You would not survive either. You would take such a big risk if you did not want to do something? How is that possible?" Charlotte was surprised and asked, "Why would Amabella be in such danger because of giving birth to a child?" Vasuji said softly and charmingly, "Because no one knows what kind of creature we give birth to. It may be a ball of meat without any consciousness, or it may be a monster, indescribable, or it may be an ordinary creature with a little extraordinary power. Come to think of it, I also want to have a child with you. Your spirituality is really stable. You can actually let Amabella give birth to offspring without going crazy. The Emilia she gave birth to is also normal, which is a bit scary." Charlotte asked back, "Isn't this very dangerous?" He didn't want to have anything to do with the sea snake, so he picked on Vasuji's language loophole and turned the tables. Vasuji chuckled and said, "There are many dangers, but there are also great rewards. If it weren't for being with you, and having Amen and Emilia, how could he suppress us and take charge of the Holy Light God's kingdom?" Charlotte learned several great secrets of the evil god in succession, and her heart was like a turmoil. According to Vasuji, Amabella's pregnancy with Emilia this time may have hidden a great secret. He has no way of knowing what the secret is yet, but Charlotte believes that this secret is absolutely earth-shattering. Seeing that Charlotte was indifferent, Vasuji suddenly let go of him and said, "I will teach you, if..." At this moment, Charlotte heard a childish voice, angrily shouting, "Little bitch, leave my father." Chapter 514, The Collapse of the Agmerus Labyrinth. Emilia floated in the sky, her little finger pointed at the endless darkness, like the queen of the night, indescribably domineering and exciting. Countless red lightnings gathered towards the sky where Emilia's little hand pointed, and even faintly gathered into the image of a beast with lightning wings. Vasuji disappeared without a trace, without even hesitating, leaving only the embarrassed Charlotte. It was only at this moment that he realized that he was brought into this world by Emilia, but he was floating above the Holy Light Kingdom without knowing it, and he was a long way away from Emilia. He didn't know if it was the rules of this world, or if Vasuji had just done something to him, so he was extremely alert. Seeing Vasuji give in, Emilia pointed her little hand, and the lightning beast as big as a small mountain pounced on the Agmerus labyrinth, and everything was charred wherever it passed. Agmerus, floating in the black sky, seemed unable to withstand this lightning beast, tilted slightly, and then turned over. Charlotte took a look at the Agmerus labyrinth, which was facing the sky, and felt that his spirit was greatly polluted. The bottom of the Agmerus labyrinth was composed of countless winding corridors, but these corridors were not static, but like long winding worms, drilling around at the bottom of the labyrinth. At this moment, Juno's great prophecy blasted down, destroying countless corridors. These corridors seemed to have life, flowing with thick black juice and making a shrill howl. Charlotte hesitated for a moment and did not dare to go down to fight. Those corridors entrenched in the bottom of the Agmerus labyrinth and drilling around looked too weird. He was just a saint, and he really had no confidence that he could step into this labyrinth and come back alive. After all, Charlotte was only at the 18th level, and he never took that step. The three palaces collided with each other in the black sky, and sometimes a powerful spell that shook the world fell. Although Charlotte had experienced 2 large-scale battles, he was still fascinated by it. At this moment, Juno suddenly shouted, "Charlotte, you take over the Holy Light Kingdom. I want to break into the Agmerus Labyrinth myself." Charlotte hurriedly landed on the Holy Light Kingdom. As soon as he took over the Holy Light Kingdom, Juno rushed into the bottom of the Agmerus Labyrinth, into the twisting and winding corridors. As soon as Juno fell into it, Agmerus suddenly turned over. The giant beast transformed by red lightning had shrunk to 1/3 and looked a little embarrassed, but it also destroyed the labyrinth beyond recognition. A deep crack almost cut Agmerus in two. Charlotte was a little worried about his teacher. He controlled the Holy Light Kingdom and fired one after another fierce attack, trying to blow it up again. All the buildings in Agmerus suddenly began to wriggle and close together, extinguishing the lightning beast alive, leaving only endless gray smoke. Emilia was furious, and all kinds of powerful spells emerged one after another. Some of them Charlotte had heard of Juno, and some of them were unheard of. Although the form of the spells should also be the Blood Clan's power words, it was beyond his understanding, and the battle immediately entered a higher intensity. This fierce battle lasted for an unknown amount of time. Although Charlotte was only a carrier of 5 divine creatures, she still felt exhausted when she launched the power of the Holy Light Kingdom. 1/3 of the Holy Light Kingdom was blown up, and it no longer looked like a palace. It looked like a tree ball made up of countless branches. The Emilia looked even more miserable. It was originally the Ishmaran Palace, a magnificent palace, but now it has become a huge charred block of earth, not even a ruin. Juno had not been heard from since he had sneaked into Agmerus. Although Charlotte was worried, she could do nothing about it. He threw out the Flame Knight's spear, and the violent power of the Flame Evil God exploded violently. The huge crack in the Agmerus labyrinth suddenly split wider, and then there was a loud cracking sound, and it was completely broken into 2 halves. The Holy Light God Kingdom suddenly pounced on a smaller piece, and countless branches stretched out and pierced into the land of the Agmerus labyrinth. 2 thoughts immediately burst out and echoed in Charlotte's mind: delicious food, evil god, praise Charlotte Mecklen, we're going to eat, 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 eat. Charlotte was horrified, and then she saw a small figure flying out of the ship and plunging into the split Agmerus fragments. Then this small body exploded into countless eyeballs, and in an instant, it polluted a large area of the labyrinth. Charlotte closed his eyes, the feeling of disgust in his heart lingered. Because he had faced the evil gods and the righteous gods many times, his spirituality had been raised to the extreme, and he suddenly became restless. Charlotte even felt that countless eyeballs seemed to be born in his body, many places seemed to grow branches, and there was an inexplicable appetite. The blood vessels in his body seemed to turn into a maze corridor. Countless strange signs broke out together. He did not hesitate to activate the Bloody Glory and started the Blood Feast meditation with all his heart. The Bloody Glory is divided into 2 parts, Protagoras breathing method and Blood Feast meditation. The Blood Feast meditation created by Protagoras is to meditate on the 37 original ancestors of the Blood Clan, and cut these original ancestors one by one and make a feast to eat. The complexity of the meditation steps and the bloody scene are so bloody that it can be called the most brutal among the many secret methods of the human race. Charlotte treated the pollution brought by these evil gods and all the visions as the original ancestors of the blood race, and sent them all to the dining table of meditation. He cut them one by one with gnashing teeth and ate them fiercely. While he was feasting, he dug out the mutated organs from his body and ate them again. Through this method, the impurities in the soaring spirituality were purified. The piece of Agmerus wreckage captured by the Holy Light God Kingdom suddenly collapsed. Charlotte could even hear countless crazy thoughts, roaring constantly, full of excitement, appetite, greed, malice, and cruelty. Those were the 5 divine creatures that made up the Holy Light God Kingdom, holding a feast. Charlotte could even sense that Amabella had also awakened Gulai and joined the ranks of snatching food. Emilia seemed a little irritable. She raised her little hand high, and the entire palace transformed by Emilia suddenly split apart and turned into hundreds of ghost ships, which collided with another piece of Agmerus maze fragment. When these ghost ships hit the maze, they turned into countless ghosts and vengeful spirits. Emilia stood on the shattered Agmerus maze at some point, holding up a blood-red banner, like a queen, commanding her thousands of warriors to conquer all those who did not submit. Wherever the undead army passed, this half of the maze fragments were contaminated by Emilia's power. Chapter 515, The Last Labyrinth Evil God. Charlotte roared and woke up from the blood feast meditation. He was sweating all over, soaking all his clothes. If he had made even a slight mistake, he might have fallen. Charlotte knew that the 5 divine creatures on the Holy Light Kingdom were evil enough, and he had always been vigilant, but he didn't expect that he would almost fall into the trap. He got rid of the pollution of the evil god's power. At this time, the war had come to an end. The Holy Light Kingdom and the Emilia were fighting for the last wreckage of the Agneris Labyrinth. Charlotte let out a long sigh of relief, and then she heard a voice behind her saying, "Charlotte, you've gained a lot." Charlotte heard the voice and knew it was Juno Arthur, his teacher, and answered, "Teacher, what did you grab?" Juno smiled slightly, swallowed and refined the ball of flesh and blood in his hand, and said, "None of us got the biggest share. I can sense that Agneris is fighting the 3 evil gods. He couldn't get rid of the entanglement of the 3 evil gods until the last moment. We destroyed him, and he was divided up by the 3 evil gods in the same instant. There are only 35 great evil gods in the New World now. The labyrinth evil god Agneris has fallen forever. The crisis of Agneris' arrival that you are worried about will never happen again." Charlotte also closed her eyes, and her whole body relaxed. Juno said with a smile, "However, because we all participated in the division of Agneris, we were all branded by the 3 evil gods." Charlotte was startled and asked, "What's going on?" Juno shook his head and said, "I don't know much either. I tried, but failed to remove the brand of the 3 evil gods. You haven't entered the holy level yet, so you may not even be able to sense it. However, there is a little good news, that is, the Holy Light God Kingdom and Emilia were not branded. They directly swallowed the brand of the 3 evil gods." Charlotte was speechless. The palace transformed by the Holy Light God Kingdom made a loud bang, and all the buildings reappeared. Even the 5 figures on the platform were complete again. Seeing the graceful figure holding Amun again, Charlotte's first reaction was to leave quickly. Before leaving, he took a look at Emilia. It was being reorganized and its appearance could not be seen yet. As soon as Charlotte appeared in the real world, he saw Juno also walked out of the void. He snapped his fingers and took Ishmarin back to the mirror world. At this time, the Holy Light Kingdom had completely restored its original appearance, but it was even more magnificent. The whole ship was shrouded in a layer of 5-color brilliance, giving people a mysterious feeling of holiness, majesty, and purity. Of course, Charlotte knew that this legendary warship had nothing to do with holiness, majesty, and purity. He looked out at the sea, and Agneris had completely disappeared. There was a mass on the sea that looked like a mountain, which looked like a city, and a ship as big as a city were rubbed together to form a pile. Charlotte shook her head and said to Juno, "When Emilia recovers, we will return." Juno smiled and said, "You left the ghost fleet in the New World." Charlotte thought about it and said, "I don't need them either, so I'll leave them in the New World to guard Mosul and Hekalin." The ghost fleet that Charlotte had captured before was already on its way back, and he didn't need to summon the fleet sent to the New World back. Charlotte took out the diary and turned to the Agneris Labyrinth. A thought came to his mind. Charlotte Mecklen successfully challenged the labyrinth evil god Agneris. In view of the fact that Agneris had fallen, Charlotte Mecklen, as the first candidate of the labyrinth evil god, temporarily took charge of the priesthood of the labyrinth and obtained control of 685 labyrinths in the Agneris Sea and 1,500 labyrinth cities in the New World. A strange rune suddenly condensed in Charlotte's body. It is thousands of times more complex than any rune Charlotte knows. Thousands of threads extend from this rune, connecting to hundreds of islands in the Agar Sea in every corner of the New World. Charlotte was stunned for a while, and then he realized that he had obtained the biggest and sweetest fruit of this god-killing. Charlotte could also imagine along the way that it was impossible for ordinary extraordinary people to succeed in challenging Agneris with a mortal body of Yijinjing. He had Juno, the name of the Holy Light God, and even a daughter named Emilia, and encountered a once-in-a-lifetime battle with evil gods. Agneris was entangled by 3 evil gods and could take the opportunity to steal home. These elements are indispensable. All the enemies who fought against Agneris, including the 3 evil gods, Juno, the 5 divine creatures on the Holy Light Kingdom, and Emilia, did not have the status of challengers of the evil god, so they were able to divide Agneris' divine body, energy, and body, but they could not obtain the power of the evil god. Perhaps as the first mortal in the history of this world to challenge the evil god and succeed, Charlotte Mecklen received a reward that she would never have been able to get. Charlotte got a little familiar with this rune of power of the labyrinth evil god, which first disqualified all the evil god pre-selections and candidates, and cut off their connection. In order to obtain an endless supply of food, Agmiris gave these people the power of the labyrinth. It took a lot of effort to spread his faith throughout the New World, so that these people could get a city with great difficulty and turn the city into a labyrinth. Then they were forced to embark on the road of challenging the labyrinth evil god. When these people died on the road of challenge, their labyrinth city belonged to Agmiris. Countless evil god preliminaries, countless evil god candidates, everything they have obtained through hard work will eventually be given to the labyrinth evil god. This is the means by which Agmiris increases his power. This is the essence of the evil god. Charlotte doesn't want to be an evil god. He doesn't want anyone to challenge them, so he simply disqualifies these people and makes all those who have been infected with the power of the evil god Agmiris no longer in danger of the evil god's arrival. Just a light choice makes all Agmiris efforts disappear. This choice is also equivalent to interrupting the road to increasing power by harvesting evil god candidates in the future, but Charlotte has no regrets. It took Emilia 13 days to digest the Agmiris labyrinth fragments she had swallowed. When the Emilia reappeared on the sea, even Charlotte couldn't help but exclaim, "What a beautiful ship!" On his back, 3 evil and weird runes suddenly lit up. And a silver snake tail suddenly emerged from the void and drew a circle on the 3 runes. Chapter 516, Charlotte Mecklen's Mark. Ijel, the storm evil god of the Agar Sea, regards you as his mortal enemy. Charlotte was a little confused by the sudden thought from the diary. Who is this storm evil god? Why is he regarded as his mortal enemy? Before Charlotte could recover, the diary sent out a second thought. Zillow, the evil god of the Agar's ocean current and tide, regards you as his mortal enemy. Charlotte was even more shocked. He had never heard of this evil god. How could the other party also regard him as his mortal enemy? Soon the third thought came out. Nero, the evil god of the Golden Sea, regards you as his mortal enemy. Charlotte then realized that it should be these 3 evil gods who had just joined forces to kill Agmiris. Although he couldn't understand why they hated him. But what other reason did the evil gods need? Shouldn't they be so moody and offend at every turn? What other reason does a serious evil god need to hate a human being? No reason is needed. Charlotte asked casually, "Teacher, have you also gained the hatred of the 3 evil gods?" Juno Arthur shook his head and said, "Although I can't cancel it, I have temporarily blocked the 3 evil gods' marks. They haven't sensed me yet." "What's wrong? Did you feel their hatred?" Charlotte was immediately unbalanced. He secretly vowed, "When I bring a fleet next time and come to the Agar Sea again, I must build a temple of the Serpent of Fate on every island. Don't you evil gods hate me? I'll let you hate enough. Wait until I establish a solid belief in the Serpent of Fate in the Agar Sea. I want to see what they will do." There are 3 evil gods in the Agar Sea. Now that Agmiris has fallen, the other 2 evil gods, the storm evil god Ijel Ocean Current and the tidal evil god Ziloxan, have become the masters of this sea area. Charlotte can't let them have an easy time. After Charlotte swore fiercely, a small silver snake tail kept spinning, as if it saw something fun and was extremely happy. At this time, in 3 different seas, 3 different evil gods were lying on the ground in different postures. There was a silver mark on their backs, and they were also branded with a Charlotte Mecklen brand. They lay on the ground in humiliation, feeling the unspeakable torture on their bodies. The 3 evil gods cursed Charlotte loudly with the most terrifying roars and the most angry emotions. They hated this man who had slapped them from a distance and branded them with humiliation. Charlotte never understood in his life why he was extremely hated by the 3 evil gods. Well, he always felt that evil gods were like this, right? After the rebirth, the Emilia was completely transformed, with a magnificence comparable to the 7 most famous palaces in the old world. There were 3 high-altitude decks connecting the 2 main buildings, and more than 20 ship towers that looked like palaces, scattered in an orderly manner. There were no creatures on the ship, except Emilia, and only Gareth, who was desperate for life, squatting on the ship. It seemed a little empty, and it was simply perfect. Charlotte waved her hands hard, and Emilia also jumped excitedly and shouted, "Dad! Thank you for the new palace you gave me." Charlotte wiped the sweat from her forehead. This thing was not given by him. Charlotte shouted loudly, "We are going home." Emilia was so happy that she happily turned around on the ship and shouted, "We are going home." Gareth's face was gloomy. and he wanted to leave the ship even more. The two legendary warships slowly turned around and began to return. Charlotte took the time to walk around the archipelago in the Argus Sea and inspected her more than 600 mazes. There are very few residents in the Argus Sea. The only dozen or so inhabited islands are all gathered near the two routes because other places are too dangerous. After all, the three evil gods in the Argus Sea are not good things. 99% of the labyrinths in the archipelago of Agneris are devoid of humans, and a group of evil spirits live there. That is, the labyrinth guards of Agneris. After Charlotte inspected, she was ready to return to the old continent and relocate part of the population here. There are tens of thousands of islands in the Argus Sea. Although most of them are not suitable for living, the area of islands suitable for living is more than 10 times larger than the area of his Duchy of Mecklen, but most of them are deserted islands. If you want to develop them into islands suitable for living and working, you need a lot of investment. Although Charlotte is not a veteran player of strategy games, he still has a strong interest in developing the Argus Sea Islands. He has calculated that if the entire Argus Sea Islands can be developed, it will be a new country that is not inferior to Ingrama. Moreover, this country is between the old and new continents. If the evil gods can be driven out and the waterway is guaranteed to be unobstructed, it will be a very prosperous commercial empire. Charlotte is now eager to return home. In addition to dispelling the mark of Agneris, remaze these islands and construct the spiritual channel, she did not stay any longer. The two legendary warships left the Argus Sea and soon encountered a storm. Charlotte could not know whether it was a certain ocean evil god showing his power or a natural weather phenomenon. Fortunately, the two legendary warships have different powers. The ocean storm cannot damage the two legendary warships. All the raging waves and endless storms will automatically disappear when they approach the two legendary warships. A few days later, the two warships passed the storm, and the magic alchemy communication sent by Charlotte unexpectedly received a reply, which had been forwarded to the fleet commanded by Kratos and docked on a nearby island. Charlotte was very surprised. He thought his fleet had returned to the Dukedom of Mecklen. He sent out several communications, but the replies he received were sporadic, and even the magic alchemy communications he received were missing words, typos, omissions, and unclear expressions. Charlotte could only sail at full speed. A few days later, he felt vaguely that he seemed to have entered another world. An island appeared on the vast ocean. Charlotte was very sure that there was no such island on the way here. Kratos brought a group of saints to greet Charlotte. When they saw the Emilia, they all showed horror. The Emilia is a brand new legendary battleship that has never appeared in this world, but its power is no less than that of the Holy Light Kingdom. If it appears in the old continent, it will definitely cause an incredible sensation. The saints under Charlotte were very curious. When they landed on the Holy Light Kingdom, they asked one after another about the origin of this legendary battleship. Charlotte could only be vague, and he was too embarrassed to say that he and Amabella had a daughter, and Emilio is a gift from birth. Just like Nezha was born with a golden ring and red silk, and Giabeoai was born with a piece of jade in his mouth. Well, this was too much like an evil god. Chapter 517, the most powerful divine creature in the Sea of Giant Whales, Ivan, the king of giant whales. Kratos said with a worried look on his face, "We left the Argus Sea and soon encountered a storm. After the storm, we found this island. We wanted to take a rest and then set off to Fars, but I didn't expect that as long as we left here, we would encounter a storm. After breaking through the storm, we would return here. No matter which direction we go, the final result will inevitably be the same." Charlotte was slightly surprised and said, "Is there a ghost wall on the sea?" He immediately realized that he had said the wrong thing. Where did the ghost wall come from in this world? It is possible that it was controlled by a certain evil god. He thought carefully for a while and asked, "Are there any evil gods around here?" Juno smiled and said, "The most powerful divine creature in the Sea of Giant Whales is Ivan, the king of giant whales." He pointed to his feet and said, "That's the one on your ship." Charlotte couldn't help swallowing her saliva and asked, "How did he fall?" Juno shrugged and said, "How can I know? When it comes to evil gods, it is a field of knowledge that mortals cannot set foot on. Unless you participate in the killing of the evil god Agneris in the labyrinth like us, you can know a little bit of the truth." When Juno said this, the entire Holy Light Kingdom was silent. Kratos couldn't help asking, "Did you kill the gods?" Even killing evil gods is a great feat that has never been heard of since the beginning of history. When this news spread to the old continent, the royal families of various countries had to issue formal documents and grant a prominent title. This news is 100 times more shocking than having a legendary battleship. That is to say, this was said by Juno Arthur, the strongest man in Baron. Otherwise, no one would believe it. In the enthusiastic eyes of everyone, Juno casually and briefly described how they took advantage of the fact that Agnerus was tripped by the other three people and attacked the body of the evil god, which led to the fall of the evil god. The holy orders under Charlotte were fascinated. Vigo's face suddenly turned pale. He was quite happy at first, but then he realized that the ship under his feet was the culmination of several evil gods, and he was immediately a little frightened. Andreas said heartlessly and happily, "With the Holy Light God Kingdom and Emilia, we will definitely be able to get out of this hellhole. To celebrate the reunion, let's have a ball." Charlotte didn't even sweep everyone's clothes and agreed. Trapped in this mysterious place, although everyone believed that they could leave sooner or later, morale was always relatively low. Although Charlotte is not a saint, she has a very bright image in the minds of her subordinates. Except for the three former captains of the Far's Royal Knights, almost all saints believe that Charlotte can solve all problems, because he has come a long way, from a clerk to a newly promoted Duke of the Empire, and has defeated countless enemies. His experience is legendary. Charlotte agreed to the ball, and at least 5 saints cheered. Charlotte shook her head and asked the 2 legendary warships to reunite with the fleet. The officers on the 7 magic alchemy warships rushed to the Holy Light Kingdom. They were delighted to find that there were more great limo on the ship, and their quality was also higher. This is of course because the Holy Light Kingdom swallowed up a small half of the Agnerus labyrinth, which improved the power level of the 5 divine creatures, and the ancient Medoro tree also evolved. Of course, the quality of the great limo created was higher. Charlotte herself was impatient with this lively atmosphere, so she simply followed Juno to the Swan Lake. Drusenio was very much like a hostess, and prepared fruit wine and hand-baked cakes for the 2. Charlotte didn't like smoking in her previous life, but suddenly she felt that she should get some cigars at this moment, such as Cohiba, king of the world. An old man and a young man held a cigar in their hands, sitting on a calfskin sofa, overlooking the sea, which was the style of an old noble. Although they were temporarily trapped, neither Charlotte nor Juno took it seriously. The 2 had just returned from killing gods. There were 4 legendary warships, 7 magic alchemy warships, 11 ancient magic ghost warships, and more than 600 ghost ships in the team. The number of holy ranks was enough to carry out a big battle like Furlington. Even if there were any evil gods, they had the confidence to break them. At this time, on the Holy Light God Kingdom, Charlotte's crew was having fun. This fleet has never lacked supplies, and there are countless great lemurs who transcend the worldly aesthetics. Charlotte also designed various entertainment facilities, which really made it easy for people to relax. This joyful atmosphere spread across the sea, arousing the anger of a certain existence. A layer of fog gradually spread, lingering around the fleet, and gradually thickened. The first person to notice the change was Juno, and Charlotte soon also sensed that an evil force was covering them from all directions. Charlotte asked in a low voice, "Is it the evil god?" Juno nodded and said, "It can barely be considered an evil god, but it is far inferior to Agnerus." "Charlotte, did you know that the Blood Clan used the human titles to establish strength levels?" Charlotte nodded and said, "I know. Only high-level Blood Clans have titles. 13 to 15 are barons, and 16 to 18 are viscounts." Juno smiled slightly and said, "Yes, the Blood Clan has 2 titles for each major level. The high level is Baron and Viscount, and the holy level is Earl and Marquis. 19 to 21 are Earls, and 22 to 24 are Marquises. Your teacher is at the peak of the holy level, which is considered a glorious Marquis." Charlotte asked, "Why did the teacher mention this?" Juno smiled slightly and said, "Above the holy level is the god level. However, most people don't understand the Blood Clan, and don't know what the 2 major titles of the god level are." Charlotte asked with a little surprise, "Aren't they the 3 emperors and 6 kings?" Juno shook his head and said, "No, 25 to 27 are the Grand Dukes of the Blood Clan. 28 to 30 are the 6 kings of the Blood Clan, and the 3 emperors are not god level, they are demigods." Charlotte really didn't know the secret of the Blood Clan, and was slightly surprised. Juno said lightly, "For me, stepping into the god level is no longer a difficult thing, but stepping into the god level and being able to maintain my own self is what I pursue. To become like, well, Those divine creatures on your ship are a kind of sadness to me. You probably have never heard of the news of the Grand Dukes of the Blood Clan, Charlotte said. Indeed, I haven't heard of it. Juno shrugged his shoulders and said, because they are all monsters, and their humanity has been completely lost. The 3 emperors and 6 kings just have some problems, and they are simply the problem itself. If my sense is correct, the one who trapped us should be a monster that has just stepped into the god level. Chapter 518. He has only rules, no reason. Charlotte was slightly surprised, then came to her senses and said, he only has rules, not reason. Juno smiled and said, almost. Charlotte suddenly thought of the god of joy. Although he is also an evil god, he is obviously not powerful enough to be called powerful. There are 36 great evil gods in the New World, but in fact there are more than 36 evil gods. Charlotte pondered for a while, then thought of the storm at sea, shook her head and said, it can't be that weak. He can control the storm and activate the fog. Juno also showed a look of sudden enlightenment. He and Charlotte looked at each other and shouted together, there are 2 evil gods. Charlotte said quickly, it should be the evil god who controls the storm who trapped the evil god of fog. We were lured here by one of them, trying to use us as bait. Juno nodded approvingly and said, your guess makes sense. I think so too. Charlotte looked at the increasingly dense fog outside, smiled slightly, and said, what a coincidence. I also know a little about fog magic. First, layers of light mist emanated from the Swan Lake, and then enveloped several nearby ghost ships. Every time the fog enveloped a ghost ship, its strength would increase by 1 point, and it would spread to other ships, soon covering the entire fleet, and then expand outward. Charlotte was only a high-level 1. Although he could activate the mist, his power was definitely not comparable to that of an evil god. However, he had turned all the ghost ships into a maze. Each of these ghost ships could provide him with a portion of power, allowing him to increase the power of the mist. The 2 groups of mist seemed to have life. They squeezed, crushed, covered, and offset each other in the air, and they were clearly separated. Charlotte was not at a disadvantage. He knew that this was not his own power, but the power of 4 legendary warships, 7 magic alchemy warships, 11 ancient magic warships, and hundreds of ghost ships. Charlotte sank his mind, and soon sensed that there was a group of strange liquid in the depths of the vast ocean. It was like an ocean current, a creature with water as its essence, and more like a group of mist. It was huge, with a diameter of tens of kilometers, far exceeding all deep-sea monsters. Threads of trickles continued to split from his body, drilled onto the sea surface, evaporated, and turned into mist. Charlotte couldn't help but said, teacher, I found the divine creature. It looks like a ball of water. He is very big, incredibly big, Juno said lightly. I sensed it too. He should not have much thoughts and emotions left, and a little bit of anger, but the way he expressed his anger was very irrational. Charlotte was talking with Juno when a message came from the magic alchemy communication device. It was sent by the Golden Goat Rolf. He said one thing concisely, I suspect that the one who trapped us is the former pirate king. Charlotte did not ask, but directly sent a message to ask the old goat to come over. Soon, the Golden Goat Herald flew to the Swan Lake. Charlotte asked, what's the matter with the pirate king? The old goat asked back, what do you think a peak saint would want to do before he dies? Before Charlotte could answer, Juno sighed and answered for him, he would try to ascend to the god level. Charlotte was immediately horrified. He also understood that this was human nature. There were countless risks in ascending to the god level, and he might even become a monster called the evil god, which was actually just a monster with divinity. But people were going to die, so who would care so much? He knew that Juno was telling the truth. The Golden Goat Herald said, there were 10 great pirates back then. The pirate king Runji Nassau was the most powerful. He was the leader of the 10 pirates. Later, he was challenged by Zimmerman and was said to have died, but I don't believe Runji Nassau would die. I don't know what happened at the time, but I suspect that the storm that trapped us was him trying to ascend to the god level. Charlotte took a deep breath. Although the old goat's speculation was a bit incredible, it was reasonable and not impossible. Golden Goat Herald said, Lanshe Nassau graduated from Hattingen University of Thunder and Storm, and he is also a powerful lightning force. The storm that trapped us makes me feel a little familiar. Charlotte frowned slightly and asked, if the pirate king turned into a storm on the sea, what is the origin of this thing trapped by him? The old goat was slightly puzzled, and Juno immediately explained it. He and Charlotte both suspected that the current situation was a fight between 2 divine creatures, and they were involved. The old goat frowned and pondered for a while, and said, "The power of controlling the fog is very similar to Turgenev, the captain of the Mist, one of the top 10 pirates. He is a Mist Knight like Antonio, and he also studied submarine spells. There are rumors that he had a conflict with the pirate king Nassau, and fought a great naval battle on the sea. After being defeated, he was thrown into the sea by Nassau and turned into a water-like monster. This statement is even more incredible. Although it seems possible, it is really unbelievable." Charlotte said, "I don't want to get involved in this fight. I plan to force my way out." Although it doesn't matter to Charlotte whether it's Nassau, Turgenev, or any other origins of them, he now has the Holy Light Kingdom and Emilia. These two legendary warships are much more powerful than Domabase and Swan Lake. He is fully confident that he can break through the fog and storm. Originally, Charlotte wanted to make some repairs, but now he didn't have that mind. With his order, the entire fleet slowly started. Although the aquatic creature from under the sea kept stimulating fog to obstruct, the fog released by this fleet repelled the fog released by the evil god. Wrapped in a thick fog, the fleet easily broke into the storm outside. Charlotte wanted to let the Holy Light Kingdom lead the way, but Emilia was very willful and took the lead. All the storms disappeared when they reached Emilia. This newly born legendary warship was determined. No matter how many times the storm tried to change its course and confuse Emilia's direction, it was useless. About 7 or 8 days later, the sky suddenly turned blue, and the storm seemed to have given up chasing, allowing the fleet to escape the storm. The normal route was ahead, and it was no longer the strange island. Chapter 519, A Mere Evil God? Not worth wasting time? Charlotte looked back and could vaguely see a monster as tall as a mountain floating on the sea in the endless storm. However, in the storm, it looked big and grotesque, and it was impossible to see its appearance clearly. He stretched out his hand and scratched his neck, making a threatening gesture. There were not many opportunities to threaten the evil god. Charlotte had to seize it, just in case he could win the joy of fate once. He owed the destiny snake many joys of fate, and was also borrowed a large sum of money by Amun, the rebellious son. Charlotte was very sure that the destiny snake did it on purpose, otherwise how could it allow Amun to borrow money at will? And in his name? Of course, it was also possible that he ridiculed the destiny snake for not knowing how to count, and the righteous God gave him a small punishment. Although at that time, the idea of blasphemy just popped up in his mind, he quickly extinguished it, replaced it with loyalty and faith, and even wrote the principle of arithmetic. Well, it seems that the meaning of mocking the little snake for not knowing how to count is even stronger. Although the throat-cutting gesture is not popular in this world, the evil god hidden in the storm obviously understood this provocation. He became furious, urged the storm, and then chased closely. Charlotte was about to give an order to speed up the fleet, and Juno and Emilia took off one after another, chanting together, "Everything I point to, all is ashes, everything I see, all is dust, everything I'll look at, is annihilated like smoke." The storm that connected the ground and the sky was blown away by the two annihilation forces, revealing the true form of him. He was like a huge pile of floating garbage on the sea, tangled with countless marine life corpses, shipwrecks, various mud, and plants in the sea, which looked disgusting. Charlotte raised the red rattlesnake and fired a shot. Although a deep pit was made in the body of this divine creature, he was too huge, and a mere deep pit was not even a needle prick for him. Charlotte shook her head and said, "He doesn't have the evil god force field." Juno landed gracefully and smiled, saying, "He is not yet at the level of Ishmael." This divine creature seemed to be frightened by the two vampire prophecies, and hurriedly hid in the storm, never daring to chase again. Charlotte shook her head. Ishmael had fallen long ago, and Agmaris was tripped by the three evil gods. These two evil gods were not in normal state. Although this divine creature was far inferior to these two evil gods in terms of power level, he was in a complete state. Once the war started, it would be a hard battle. He had been out for a long time and was eager to go back to Fars. After all, he came out to solve the crisis caused by Agmaris's arrival. Now that the crisis has been resolved, even Agmaris has been resolved. He should go back to Fars and plead with His Majesty Emperor MacLean Breton to marry Princess Anne and live a happy life from then on. Charlotte said calmly, "Just an evil god. It's not worth wasting time, let's go back." Even Juno was impressed by Charlotte's trick. Just an evil god? Not worth wasting time? Isn't this the line that a mortal should say? Isn't this the bearing that only another evil god can have? Juno believed very much that Charlotte had not yet been promoted to the holy rank, but he would become an evil god sooner or later. Well, Charlotte's family of 7 people are all evil gods except him. The Mechlin fleet quickly got rid of the storm, and the rest of the voyage was safe. The closer the Sea of Giant Whales is to the old continent, the safer it is, because the closer it is to the old continent, the closer it is to the realm of the 9 gods. In order to get home as soon as possible, Charlotte even abandoned the Ghost Fleet and let them follow behind, and only brought 4 legendary warships, 7 magic alchemy warships, and 11 ancient magic warships to speed up all the way. Along the way, Charlotte condensed 2 more bloody whirlpools. Originally, Bloody Glory could only condense 13 bloody vortices, but he later obtained the secrets of the Arthur and Vango clans, condensing 2 more bloody vortices, reaching an unprecedented 15 bloody vortices. Charlotte could even feel that the bloody glory in his body had reached the boiling point, and he was only 1 step away from a breakthrough, but he could not take the crucial step, and he didn't know what was wrong. Charlotte asked Juno for advice, and Juno always said, "It takes a subtle feeling to be promoted to the saint level. You are only a little bit short of life perception now." Charlotte didn't believe it very much. He always felt that the teacher was hiding something and didn't tell him. Especially when Charlotte saw Vigo, she always wanted to complain, "Even Vigo can be promoted to the saint level. I should have been promoted to the saint level long ago." Charlotte also thought about it repeatedly pondered the bloody glory, and worked hard on the secret methods of the 3 royal families, but her strength could be continuously improved, and even exceeded the upper limit of the 18th level, but she still couldn't feel the opportunity to be promoted. Charlotte also tried to ask the Snake of Fate, but the little snake directly deducted a portion of the joy of fate from him, so Charlotte didn't dare to do it again. It was also a bit wrong to ask one of the 9 gods how to become a blood clan saint. After all, the blood clan is evil, and several blood ancestors are all evil gods. Soon, this fleet composed purely of legendary warships, magic alchemy warships, and ancient magic ghost warships arrived at Gelling Island. Charlotte did not rest in other cities on the island, but bypassed Gelling Island directly, intending to stay in Cappadocia for a few days, replenish the fleet's water, and then set off back to Fars. When this fleet appeared in Cappadocia, the people of this small town were horrified at first. No one had ever seen so many legendary warships, not to mention the magic alchemy warships and ancient magic ghost warships. But when the flag of the Mechlin family was seen by the residents of Cappadocia, the residents of this small town were excited. Countless ships came out to welcome Charlotte to his loyal Cappadocia. When Charlotte landed on the land, Cruz and Captain Seaman came together. Cruz had become the manager of the city, and Seaman had become the manager of the port. The 2 of them managed the city in an orderly manner, and it was very prosperous. Today, the population of this city has expanded to 300,000. This is still a large number of people who have been diverted to other cities on the island. Charlotte often transports people here, which is equivalent to indirectly promoting the prosperity of this city. With sufficient labor force and the protection of the Rose Fleet, the strongest fleet in Fars, and a fleet of more than 1,000 merchant ships, Cappadocia has become the most famous commercial city in the Sea of Giant Whales. Charlotte asked about Menelman, and after learning that this senior was on St. Michael Island, she thought for a while and decided to visit her tomorrow. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 520 has an old aristocratic style. When Charlotte arrived in Cappadocia, he found that although the city was prosperous, it also had some minor problems. He sent too many people, and many of them were his opponents, which led to little chaos in Cappadocia. At least thousands of people were imprisoned in the prison. Cruz was troubled by this. He couldn't kill these people, nor could he release them. As for changing their beliefs, it was almost impossible. When Charlotte learned about this, she decisively chose to send these people to the Argels Islands, where there was a shortage of people to open up wasteland. Cruz didn't expect that the problem that had been bothering him for a long time could be solved with such a simple and crude method. Charlotte also gave Seaman an order to let him go to the Argels Islands to establish a base, and promised him 100 ghost ships. Charlotte had too many of these things, and they had to be used appropriately. Simply keeping them in his hands would only be a waste of resources, except for showing off his power. Of course, this promise can only be fulfilled when the ghost ship arrives in Cappadocia, but Seaman believes that Charlotte will never break his promise. Over the years, both crews and Seaman knew Charlotte's temper and character. Everything he did had a purpose. As long as he could achieve his goal, he didn't mind giving up other benefits. Even if he had taken away the benefits in the past to achieve his goal, as long as he cooperated, he would slowly return them, or even give more. Seaman was robbed of a merchant ship by Charlotte Mecklen, but now he has at least 5 ships under his name, not including other profits. Seaman was so excited that he trembled when he learned that he was about to take charge of 100 ghost ships. For Charlotte, ghost ships are fighting power, but for this businessman, ghost ships are money-making tools that work hard and do not ask for salary. Charlotte gave way to open up routes, which was like a clear hint to him that he could make money with these ghost ships, and even the money earned could belong to Seaman completely. Charlotte stayed in Cappadocia for one night, and the next day she took the fleet to St. Michael Island. When a fleet consisting of 4 legendary warships, 7 magic alchemy warships and 11 ancient magic ghost warships appeared on the sea surface, St. Michael Island and Cappadocia were in a panic. It was not until someone discovered the flag of the Mecklen family that a magic alchemy warship sailed over to greet Charlotte's fleet. Mecklenburg was still dashing and heroic. Now she is an important figure in the Fars Empire. Although her strength is not as good as that of the Duchess Misu, her position in the navy is much higher than that of the Duchess Misu, because there were other naval forces to compete with the Duchess Misu in the past. Now the Fars Navy. No force can compete with Mecklenburg. This first rose of the empire is the real number 1 in the Empire Navy. When Mecklenburg saw Charlotte, she was also slightly surprised. She knew that Charlotte left Fars and led a fleet to sail far away, but she didn't know why Charlotte left. Charlotte didn't explain to anyone, but it was less than a year later, and the returning Charlotte already had the strength comparable to an imperial navy. Although Charlotte's fleet only had more than 20 ships, the 4 legendary warships alone were enough to dwarf any empire's fleet. Mecklenburg didn't know that Charlotte had more than 1,000 ghost ships. If he knew, he would probably suspect that Charlotte was preparing to rebel. When Charlotte saw Mecklenburg, she felt a very close feeling. When he came across, the first thing he hugged was the long, straight and slender legs of the senior sister. Mecklenburg also gave him a generous reward. If Mecklenburg hadn't promoted him to the chief clerk, he would not have been able to get Anne's favor, and there would not have been many things behind. Mecklenburg took a step forward, her figure swaying, like a blooming rose, just like strolling in the garden, walking in the sky. When she stepped on the Holy Light Kingdom, it really made the whole ship light up, as if it was captured by her beauty. Charlotte was slightly surprised and shouted, "Senior Mecklenburg, you have made a breakthrough again." Mecklenburg did not expect that Charlotte would notice this at the first time. He smiled and said, "Indeed, I have made some progress." Charlotte took a deep breath and whispered, 23 level, this first rose of the empire has always been famous for her beauty. Before entering the navy, no one knew that she had already broken through the saint level. In the impression of many people, she was still a high-level extraordinary person. At that time, Charlotte only thought that this senior sister was an extremely rare high-level extraordinary person. Even when Mecklenburg was chasing Baron Leo, he would rather let this blood clan master go than show his extraordinary strength. The first time Charlotte saw Mecklenburg show the strength of the saint level was when she fought with Princess May. He said with some envy, "Senior sister is really talented. I am now stuck at the 18th level and have not broken through for a long time." Andreas couldn't help but say, "Have you been stuck at the 18th level for a year?" Charlotte hesitated for a moment. He really couldn't remember the date. Andreas said unhappily, "A year is a long time without a breakthrough." "Charlotte, are you showing off? Or are you deliberately showing off to everyone?" "What is arrogance?" Charlotte shrugged her shoulders and said, "That's not what I meant, Andreas. Aren't you also at the 20th level? That's stronger than Vigo." Upon hearing this, Vigo quietly took a step back. As the weakest saint in this group, he now felt very hurt. Andreas's face flushed. In Charlotte's team, he was second only to Vigo. "Well, in terms of weakness." Mecklenburg couldn't help but smile and said, "When we first met, you were still a first-level extraordinary." Charlotte sighed and said, "Yeah, a few months before I met you, I thought I would never be able to be promoted to an extraordinary level." Even though Charlotte was the leader of this team, this sentence made many people look at her with contempt. Although Charlotte was at the 18th level, almost no one looked down on him, because almost everyone, including Juno, believed that Charlotte would be promoted to the saint level sooner or later. This guy's breakthrough speed was too fast, as if a righteous God was blessing him every day. Well, it can't be said to be. Mettleman was very interested in these 4 legendary warships and asked about their origins. Charlotte first invited Mettleman to her cabin, and then let Andreas tell her about his experience from beginning to end. Charlotte was now tired of bragging himself, and he needed someone to help him brag. Andreas was obviously the most suitable person. After all, he was the son of Constantine, the former strongest man of the Black Phoenix, and the youngest saint level of the former Black Phoenix dynasty. When he bragged for him, he had the style of an old noble. Chapter 521 New World Conference. If time goes back 2 or 3 years, Andreas's reputation is much greater than Mettleman's. The first rose of the empire. It's not a prestigious nickname. But the youngest saint of the Black Phoenix dynasty, that's a real reputation. But the two people's identities and status are completely different now. Mettleman has become a mountain in the Fars Empire Navy. Andreas has become a retainer of Charlotte Mecklen. Well, it's quite strange. Andreas defected to Charlotte before because the Black Phoenix dynasty was destroyed and he was angry with his father. It was just a temporary expedient. But now if you let Andreas leave, he will definitely draw his sword without hesitation to defend his power on the Holy Light Kingdom. After listening to Andreas's description, Mettleman was shocked and could not describe it in words for a long time. She said, "You haven't returned to Fars yet, so you should not know the current situation. Mossad has defected to Medefis. They are raising the banner of rebellion and vowing to push the Breton emperor off the throne. In addition to them, several nobles of the Axel family have also launched a rebellion, echoing Medefis from afar." Charlotte was slightly surprised and asked, "Has His Majesty not wiped them out yet?" Mettleman said, "There are some disagreements on the division of the Black Phoenix. Now the 4 empires are on the verge of war, and war may break out at any time. His Majesty Breton and Antonio are both on the front line and are temporarily unable to suppress the rebels." Charlotte thought that after the division of the Black Phoenix, the old continent would be peaceful. Unexpectedly, it may have been a year since she left, and the old continent is still at war. He was even more eager to go home, and said, "I'll go back to the Duchy of Mecklen right now." Mettleman hesitated for a moment, and whispered, "Junior, your Duchy of Mecklen is gone." Charlotte was shocked and shouted, "Who swallowed my Duchy of Mecklen?" Mettleman saw that Charlotte was surprised but not angry, and felt a little strange, so he asked, "Junior, aren't you angry?" Charlotte said, "What's there to be angry about? I'll lead the troops to fight back, although it's a little trouble, it's just a little trouble." Mettleman glanced at the saints behind Charlotte, and suddenly felt that this sentence made sense. Who else would it be? Wouldn't he say it made sense? Charlotte asked, "I think I have some face in the 4 empires. The Lionheart King and the Crown Prince love me very much. His Majesty Alfred Guillaume is also very kind to me. The strongest man in Bayern is my teacher, and the second strongest man is Andreas's father." Andreas's face was disgusted, and he said, "Don't mention that old thing." Charlotte hummed, indicating that she knew, and continued, "His Majesty MacLean Breton." Almost everyone couldn't help but add a sentence for him, "That's your father-in-law." Charlotte paused and said, "I really can't think of who would eat the heart of a dragon and the courage of a whale to take away my Duchy of Mecklen." Mettleman said helplessly, "It's a group of people who came back from the New World." Charlotte was immediately discouraged. No matter how wide his network of contacts in the Old World was, it was impossible for him to influence the New World. This group of bumpkins in the New World didn't recognize his name, so there was really nothing he could do. Charlotte asked, "My Duchy of Mecklen has 2 saints in charge. How come it was easily occupied?" Mettleman said helplessly, "Because the people who came back from the New World are too powerful." 6 groups of people from the New World landed and quickly formed a New World Conference. They have at least 20 saints and 70,000 to 80,000 elite soldiers. There are too many coastal cities in your Duchy of Mecklen, and they all face the Sea of Giant Whales, which is the most convenient place for landing for those who have returned from the New World. After their fleet returned, they found that other places were impeccable, but the Duchy of Mecklen was quite weak. They launched an attack brazenly. Now your Knights of Favonius only has the Black Phoenix city left, and it is now crumbling and in danger. After this group of people formed the New World Conference, they sent notes to the 4 empires, hoping to gain recognition. At present, the 4 empires have rebuked them, but they can't do anything about them. After all, the Duchy of Mecklen belongs to Fars in name, and His Majesty Brittany is now in a state of panic. He has to confront the front line and distract himself from the two rebels in the country. He really can't spare the troops to conquer this land. The other three empires have no reason to do so. Charlotte didn't expect the situation to be so complicated. She sighed and suddenly found that Sebastiani was not there. She asked, "Senior sister, why are you alone? Where are the saints around you?" Menelman rolled his eyes at him and said, "Of course they were sent to Black Phoenix City. Otherwise, how do you think you can defend Black Phoenix City with the two saints you left behind?" Charlotte suddenly realized and hurriedly expressed her gratitude. He was a little surprised in his heart. Since Menelman sent his men, why didn't he go? Could it be that the two of them were not close enough? Then he heard Menelman say faintly, "You must ask, why don't I go?" Charlotte was too embarrassed to nod, and said embarrassedly, "Senior sister must have a reason." Menelman took a deep breath and said, "Junior brother, you have to be mentally prepared. Now, Anne, Guillaume, Sophia Galanid, are all in Black Phoenix City." Menelman didn't say why he didn't go to Black Phoenix City, but Charlotte now knows. If there's a choice, he doesn't want to go to such a horrible place. Charlotte is not a fool, of course she knows it in her heart. But is it possible that he won't go? It would be fine if it was just Black Phoenix City, but Anne was in Black Phoenix City now, and Charlotte really couldn't delay for a minute. He said to Menelman, "I won't bother you anymore, I'm going home now." Menelman hesitated and said, "I'll go with you. It's going to be a direct battle. I can't just sit back and watch this happen." Charlotte issued an order, and with Menelman bringing 3 magic alchemy warships to join, the fleet set off again, heading straight for Black Phoenix City. Charlotte didn't expect that not long after he left, he was almost robbed. He swore that he would not let these barbarians from the New World have an easy time. Aren't the people of the New World trying to escape the war of the evil god? Charlotte swore to let these barbarians from the New World know. Charlotte Mecklen. The horror is no less than any great evil god. At this time, there were more than 10 saints in Black Phoenix City. In addition to the 2 left by Charlotte, there were also supporters from the 4 empires, Duchess Misu herself, and the main fleet from the Fars Navy. However, the war was still very fierce. Chapter 522. When Charlotte comes back, I will return all their arrogance to them. Anne of Brittany, the Grand Duchess, stood at the top of Black Phoenix City. Her innocent face was replaced by determination. Not long after Charlotte left, fleets from the New World appeared one after another. They soon discovered that there was a piece of land in the Old World that was rich, close to the sea, and not ruled by any strong people. As for the reputation of Duke Charlotte Mecklen, it was simply not worth mentioning to the people of the New World. A mere novelist who won the title by pleasing the newly promoted eldest daughter of Emperor Fars. Well, in the eyes of those who returned from the New World, Charlotte Mecklen was just a lucky jester. A son-in-law who got lucky. These people launched a raid on the Dukedom of Mecklen without hesitation. The war began. Charlotte's Knights of Favonius were defeated. There was no way. Charlotte took away almost all the saints, and those who stayed were just ordinary extraordinary people. And Charlotte's teaching to his subordinates has always been to save their lives. Under the command of Anastasia, Dubin and others, the Knights of Favonius used the maze passage to retreat in an orderly manner, without much loss. However, this strategic retreat, in the eyes of those who returned from the New World, was a sign that the enemy was vulnerable, and they attacked more recklessly all the way. After learning the news, Anne did not hesitate to bring Sister Karen, Claire Brittany, and Abner Sumai to rescue. Anne also knew that her father and brother could not spare any troops, so she decisively ordered the Knights of Favonius to retreat to Black Phoenix City, abandon all the land, and not leave any supplies. All that could not be taken away were sent to Machupi in Cappadocia. The former is a city in Fars, and the latter is a city in Ingrima, and Menelman is in charge. Anne originally thought that she brought 3 saints, plus the Black Dragon and Regulus left behind by Charlotte, enough to fight a beautiful counterattack under Black Phoenix City. But as more and more New World fleets landed and the New World Conference was established, Anne immediately gave up her fantasy and asked for help from all the targets she could help. She also received support from almost all the forces close to Charlotte, and turned the entire Black Phoenix City into an iron barrel fortress. The 2 sides fought dozens of battles under the Black Phoenix City, and Anne firmly defended the city. In all the countries of the Old World, from royal nobles to the lower-class civilians, Anne Brittany's reputation soared like a nightingale. She was no longer a canary in a cage, nor was she an innocent little princess, but a serious diplomat, military strategist, and politician. Her reputation was no less than that of her father and brother. Although she was still a little panic in her heart, Anne had learned not to show these emotions. Looking at the dense fleet outside the Black Phoenix City, there was only a burning flame in her beautiful eyes, and she was eager to fight. Next to Anne was Sophia Galinold, who was famous in the Fars Empire and as bright as the moon in the sky, the second mountain of the Imperial Navy. When she learned that Black Phoenix City was under siege, she immediately put aside everything and led her fleet to join the war, regardless of the obstruction of her father, Count Galinold. Now she is Anne's deputy and has made great contributions in the war to defend Black Phoenix City. After all, Anne has never fought a war, but Sophia Galinold has participated in several naval battles of the Empire and has rich experience in commanding fleets. Behind the two of them is the biggest contributor to the Black Phoenix City's persistence to the present, Princess May Guillaume, Duchess Misou. Beside Misou is her daughter, Adosa Misou. The two saints left by Charlotte and the senior officers automatically took on the identity of Duke Mecklen's retainers and fully supported Anne, so even though Black Phoenix City has a strong person like Duchess Misou, it is still firmly in Anne's hands. A figure slowly rose into the air from the warship, holding a giant sword in his hand, and shouted arrogantly, "Grand Duke Anne, you and the Black Phoenix City have reached the end of your rope, and your territory has been lost. What's the point of you continuing to resist? Hand over the Black Phoenix City and let all your subordinates surrender. I can let you leave on your own and go back to Fars, or you can stay. I admire you very much and can marry you and let you continue to live on this land." Princess May slightly separated her hands, raised one hand in the air, and gently pulled with the other hand, and a pink fighting spirit turned into a sharp arrow and shot out like lightning. Facing the arrows of fighting spirit fired by Princess May, the strong man from the New World smiled slightly, and the giant sword in his hand turned around and smashed Princess May's arrows of fighting spirit. He shouted loudly, "Since you don't know how to appreciate it, after the capture of Black Phoenix City this time, all the men will be demoted to slaves, and the women will depend on our mood. I will make you happy to death." This man laughed arrogantly, but Annie raised her hand and told everyone not to act rashly. The strongest in Black Phoenix City are Black Dragon, Regulus, Princess May and Grand Duchess Misou, but the four of them are all 22nd level, but the three leaders of the New World Conference are all 23rd level. If it weren't for the Temple of the Serpent of Destiny in Black Phoenix City, they would not be able to resist the coalition forces of the New World. Anne said calmly, "Don't worry about his provocation. When Charlotte comes back, I will return all their arrogance. As long as Charlotte is mentioned, the fighting spirit of the Knights of Favonius will be full. Even if the enemy is incredibly powerful, they will not be afraid, because Charlotte has never let them down." Montblanc shouted insults and humiliated everyone in Black Phoenix City in every possible way. He issued various threats and temptations, but the people of Black Phoenix City were unmoved. Seeing that all verbal attacks were ineffective, he became angry and swung the giant sword to chop it down fiercely. An attack like a landslide and a tsunami hit the sky above the Black Phoenix City, but was eliminated by a strange force. He cursed angrily, "What kind of evil god is protecting this city? If there is no evil god to protect them, these weak saints can't withstand my sword." Another saint from the New World Congress also slowly floated in the air, smiled very lewdly, and said, "Haven't you given up on that girl named Annie?" Montblanc snorted coldly and said, "What? You want to exchange the girl you like with me?" The saint from the New World Congress shrugged his shoulders and said, "I don't care. This is the first time I've seen a city that can gather so many beauties. I can have any of them. I'm not picky. But it's a pity that the most beautiful princess is favored by Boss Avis." Montblanc glanced at the top of the Black Phoenix City. There were at least a dozen beauties, and they would be unparalleled in the New World. Several leaders of the New World Congress had already divided up the spoils. He glanced at Princess May, his heart warmed, and he whispered, "After I have had fun with Avish, I will also have a taste of Princess Ingrima." Just as the two of them were chatting unscrupulously above the Black Phoenix City, a long whistle was heard on the sea, and the fleet broke through the waves and was heading towards the Black Phoenix City. Chapter 523. I know he is your fiancé, but I still want you to tell him for me. Seeing the newly appeared fleet on the sea from afar, Anne's face suddenly turned pale. This fleet has 4 legendary warships, and they are all unheard of legendary warships. There are also 10 magic alchemy warships and 11 ancient magic ghost warships behind. The old continent has never had ancient magic ghost warships. Even Sophia Galinold closed her eyes and felt despair. The enemy is too powerful. She couldn't help but say to Annie, let me take you away, I will stay here to resist. Sophia Gallinol took a deep breath and said, I know he is your fiancé, but I still want you to tell him from me, I love him, let's go. Princess May and Duchess Misu looked at each other, and they all knew that the war was over. The 4 legendary warships were so powerful that there was no power to resist them. Even the 4 empires would feel frustrated in the face of such a powerful force. But at this moment, Black Dragon, under all the pressure, whispered, one of the ships is the Holy Light Kingdom. He was afraid that if he didn't speak, Princess May and other girls would also make some affectionate confessions. When Charlotte came back, it would be a bloody hell. Black Dragon had seen the Holy Light Kingdom. Although he didn't know why the ship could sail, he was too impressed by the Holy Light Kingdom. Soon someone shouted, Dalmabas. One of the ships is the Dalmabas. Charlotte didn't know that because of the misunderstanding caused by the fleet, a storm was brewing in Black Phoenix City. This storm against him was much more violent than the sea storm launched by some evil god. Charlotte saw 2 saints from the New World chatting in the sky, and asked casually, what are they talking about? Juno smiled slightly and said, they are talking about how to divide your girl. As soon as Juno said this, he faintly sensed a small silver snake tail sticking out from the void and patted his shoulder. Recently, he has been studying the evil god, and some annoying influences have suddenly disappeared. If Juno Arthur relies on himself, it may take several years to eliminate these influences, and some negative effects may never be eliminated, becoming a hidden danger for him to ascend to the god level. Juno was overjoyed and added, these 2 are thinking about Annie. The aura on Charlotte suddenly became very scary. He waved his hand and asked the fleet to continue to accelerate, and soon approached the fleet of the New World Alliance. Charlotte had no intention of stopping the fleet. Instead, he pressed his hand and let the Holy Light Kingdom take the lead, followed by the Emilia, and was going to crush it directly. These 2 legendary warships are much more powerful than the Swan Lake and Dalmabas. Although the New World Alliance also has magic alchemy warships, none of them can compare with these 2 legendary warships. Faced with a fleet that rammed over, the fleet of the New World Alliance had to give way one after another. These New World people were cursing and swearing, and even more than a dozen saints flew into the air, intending to teach Charlotte a lesson. Monteblanc was also surprised by this fleet. He flew over to meet the Holy Light Kingdom and shouted, I am Monteblanc, one of the 3 speakers of the New World Congress. Which empire are you from? Are you planning to rescue Black Phoenix City? Charlotte asked calmly. Excuse me, Mr. Monteblanc, were you discussing with your companions how to divide my girl? Monteblanc was slightly stunned, then laughed wildly. Yes? We are discussing this matter. However, there is more than one girl in Black Phoenix City. Are they all yours? Juno Arthur immediately opened his arms and said, that's right. The beautiful ladies in Black Phoenix City all belong to my students. Charlotte Mecklin. Charlotte had no other thoughts in her mind at this moment. He could no longer listen to Juno's words about all the beautiful ladies in Black Phoenix City belonging to him. He had only one thought in his mind. These bastards are actually discussing dividing my girl. How dare they think? They are so bold. They already have a way to die. Even if a few evil gods dare to think so, I will make them perish under the Black Phoenix City. Juno Arthur stirred up the fire, and when he turned around, he saw 5 looming figures, one of whom was holding a little boy and his face was full of anger. He hurriedly added, the beautiful ladies on this ship also belong to my student Charlotte Mecklin. Menelman's face suddenly turned red. She took a deep breath and whispered, by the good words. Charlotte was calm on the surface, but the anger in her heart was so hot that it could burn everything. He had no ill will towards the people of the New World, and even had simple sympathy, but when these people of the New World returned to the Old World, the first thing they did was to attack his dukedom of Mecklin. Not only did they occupy his land, but they also coveted his women. Now he finally knew why the people of the New World were willing to believe in evil gods. When Monteblanc heard the name of Charlotte Mecklin, he couldn't help but be slightly stunned. When he saw the fleet, he misunderstood, smiled slightly, and said, it turns out to be Duke Charlotte Mecklin. You borrowed these ships from various countries. Are you planning to save your territory? Sorry, I want to save the Duke of Mecklin's territory. A mere batch of warships is not enough, you also need a group of powerful saints. As far as I know, the empires of the Old World are still fighting for interests. No one can spare the strength to help you fight for your personal interests. How about this? I'm a gentleman, and I'm willing to give you a chance. If you can defeat me in a duel, I can make the decision to return your land. If you lose, take the girls from Black Phoenix City as compensation." When Montblanc said this, the New World saints who followed him couldn't help laughing, and someone shouted, "That's right. Montblanc's words can fully represent the New World Congress. It's just, we heard that Duke Charlotte Mecklen is a fucking high-level extraordinary person. Why don't you surrender without a fight?" Montblanc deliberately proposed the duel just to humiliate Charlotte. Of course, he had heard that this Duke Charlotte Mecklen was very talented and had even been promoted to a high-ranking rank, but to them, a high-ranking rank was nothing. He was very sure that Charlotte would not dare to fight. Although this fleet was a little too powerful, the saints of the New World had fought many battles with evil gods and accumulated a lot of evil wisdom. If they could lure the enemy out and leave the legendary battleship to duel, their chances of winning would increase immediately. Montblanc believed that Charlotte would not dare to fight. But being able to lure out several of his saints and kill them in the decisive battle was also a very successful strategy. Facing the unscrupulous ridicule of this group of New World people, Charlotte said lightly, "Okay. I accept your challenge." Charlotte took a step forward and slowly took off in front of everyone's eyes. Chapter 524 Dad. "This is delicious, can I eat it?" A saint from the New World had his eyes lit up, and he winked at his two companions. The three of them suddenly accelerated, split into three different directions, and rushed towards Charlotte like lightning. Charlotte's men saw the scene and were about to take off, but they saw the head of the Mecklen family shaking his body, so fast that he left a shadow. He didn't use any tricks, but just punched a saint from the New World in the lower abdomen, punching through the saint's lower abdomen. The saint's desperate eyes were full of disbelief. He hit another man's chest with an elbow, smashing his sternum and internal organs into minced meat. Seeing that he was dead, he reached out and grabbed the shoulders of the last saint who attacked him, separated his hands, and tore him in half. Charlotte killed 3 saints with one move, shockingly not only the saints from the New World, but also his men. Andreas couldn't help but ask, how can he be so fast? The phoenix breathing technique of the Constantine family is a secret technique known for its speed, but it is definitely not that fast. Perhaps Count Constantine could reach this speed, or even faster than Charlotte, but Constantine was the former top master of the Black Phoenix dynasty. In terms of strength, he might not be much inferior to Juno. Charlotte had just been promoted to the saint rank, and it hadn't even been a minute since she was promoted. Juno was amazed and shouted, "Charlotte, how is your lightness skill?" Charlotte didn't say anything, but just gestured 2 fingers to her teacher, then retracted them and stretched out 7 more. Juno shrugged and said, "There are too many supernatural powers." Charlotte just learned that after being promoted to the saint rank, all supernatural powers will have an earth-shaking improvement. Runes are now condensed in his 15 bloody whirlpools, and the lightness stratagem condensed more than 20 runes in one breath, a total of 27, which is why he just showed a speed as fast as thunder and lightning. Of course, in addition to speed, Charlotte just used other secret methods. If it was purely based on speed, it would definitely not be possible to achieve the results just now. Montblanc raised his eyebrows. He just noticed that the 3 saints of the New World secretly communicated and attacked Charlotte, but there was no intention to stop them. The living environment in the New World is much more cruel than that in the Old World, so the people of the New World are not as grand as the people of the Old World. They don't care about the grandeur of their actions. They use sneak attacks, group attacks, poisoning and cursing, and no one thinks there is anything wrong. Is it a life and death battle? What should we be cautious about? Montblanc even thought that if Charlotte was beaten to death by these 3, it would be fine. If he was captured alive, they would definitely laugh at him for being too naive and believing in fighting alone. In this world, as long as you kill the enemy, who cares about the means? But he never expected that the result would be completely different from what he expected. Charlotte used thunderous means and cruel heart to kill 3 saints in one move, and no one could survive the second move, and no one could survive. Although Montblanc was surprised, he had seen many dead people in the New World, so he didn't care and said calmly, "Your opponent is me." Before Charlotte could speak, she heard a sharp voice, with a bit of childishness, shouting, "Dad, this is delicious, can I eat it?" Charlotte said calmly, "Emilia. The city in front is the boundary, everyone outside the city, you can eat it. This war. I don't need prisoners, and I won't leave any alive. I want to let these New World barbarians know, what the hell is a reverse scale?" Montblanc suddenly became alert, and his whole body's fighting spirit was raised to the limit. The fighting spirit of up to the 23rd level was poured into the giant sword, and it turned around, but it didn't cut anything. The next second, there was a cute little foot on his head, and it kicked hard, almost kicking the head of the New World Congress speaker into his chest. Montblanc felt like a cannonball, falling into the sea, but he didn't know how to turn around and landed on a ship. Montblanc rubbed his head. The kick just now was so elusive that he almost thought it was kicked by an evil god. But he was a veteran after all, so he forced himself to gather his fighting spirit and wanted to get out of the ship. Montblanc could sense that there was something strange about this ship, and he didn't want to fight in an unfamiliar environment. But the next second, he found that no matter how hard he gathered his strength, he couldn't get into the air, and he was immediately horrified. Montblanc was trying desperately to leave when he saw a person squatting on the ground. He thought it was a sneaky enemy, so he kicked him. The squatting person grabbed him with his backhand, and the two of them exchanged 7 or 8 moves in an instant. This man's body seemed to be cast in copper and iron, so hard that it was terrifying. When he slashed at him with his sword, the opponent actually blocked with his fists and feet. Sparks flew everywhere, but he couldn't cut him. He was also extremely powerful and experienced in combat. He was an extremely terrifying enemy. Montblanc was more and more frightened as the fight went on. He couldn't help but shout, "Who are you, Gareth Mecklin?" Charlotte Mecklin's eldest son, Montblanc couldn't help but curse. Didn't he want to duel with me? Why did he assign you to sneak attack, plot against, and siege? Do you still follow the rules? Gareth said lightly. Didn't you sneak attack, plot against, and siege first? What's more, I have never seen my father duel with anyone seriously. The time when my father dueled with others honestly was before I became his son. You didn't catch up with that era. Also, if you don't attack me, I won't fight you at all. Montblanc hurriedly stepped back a few steps. As expected, Gareth didn't make a move. He tried several more times, but still couldn't leave the boat. He couldn't help but ask, "How can I leave?" Gareth said, "Of course I'll ask my sister. As long as she allows you to leave." Montblanc breathed a sigh of relief. Although he always felt that Charlotte and her children were a little strange, the elder brother seemed to be mentally ill, and the younger sister probably had some problems. He took a breath and shouted, "Miss Mecklin, please let me out." A little girl, at some point, floated and sat on Gareth's shoulder, with a set of knives and forks in her hands and a silver plate in her mouth. She sobbed and said, "Brother Gareth, do you want a piece?" Gareth said lightly, "I don't eat this kind of thing." Emilia held the plate and said, "Who are you kidding? We are brother and sister. Every time I give you delicious food, you swallow it up cleanly. Otherwise, how could you be promoted to the 23rd level?" Although the 23rd level is just a stronger waist, Gareth said nothing. He had long learned not to talk back to his sister. Montblanc felt it was very harsh. What does the 23rd level mean to be a stronger waist? Who is the waist? Chapter 525 Avish's Armistice Conditions. Charlotte was not so arrogant that he wanted to challenge the top Saint rank 23 just after being promoted to Saint rank. As Gareth said, it was a long time ago that he had a serious duel with someone. After using Emilia to deal with Montblanc, Charlotte rushed towards the group of Saint ranks from the New World. He had no weapons, just bare hands. With Charlotte's speed as fast as a god, there were not many Saint ranks from the New World who could withstand his full strength attack. Charlotte made 7 moves and forced back 6 Saint ranks from the New World. One unlucky guy had his head blown up by him. This unlucky Saint rank from the New World landed on the Holy Light Kingdom. The deck of this legendary warship suddenly turned into a huge mouth and swallowed him alive, making a terrifying chewing sound. The Saint ranks of the New World Conference only then felt the horror of Charlotte and hurriedly formed groups of 3 or 5 to form a joint posture. However, after Charlotte's crazy attack, his subordinates also took off and joined the battle. Charlotte had just been promoted to the Saint rank, and his strength was not yet stable. Although the previous round of attacks looked impressive, it was actually an overperformance, consuming at least 30% to 40% of his bloody glory. After his subordinates joined the battle, he did not continue to fight, but took a step back and slowly operated bloody glory. First, he wanted to recover his strength. Second, he wanted to stabilize his strength. And third, he had not yet fully digested the benefits of being promoted to the Saint rank. After being promoted to the Saint rank, a large number of supernatural runes will be condensed. The extraordinary rank only represents the strength of energy, and the strength of supernatural power is the real combat power. After being promoted, Charlotte put all his energy into the light speed art, until the light speed art could no longer be digested. He hesitated slightly in his heart, and then put it into one of Adonis' supernatural powers, the blazing bomb. After being promoted to the saint rank, he could fly into the air, which led to the unlimited expansion of the battlefield. The importance of close combat decreased, and the demand for long-range attacks increased sharply. Charlotte really needed a means of long-range attack. Adonis's blazing bullet is the most cost-effective choice. Runes of blazing bullet condensed continuously, but when the 18th rune condensed, this ability reached the upper limit. Charlotte hesitated a little and invested the last promotion energy into insight, raising this ability to X12. Charlotte felt a little regretful. If there was enough energy, he would choose to upgrade the Blood Flame Magic Lance. Feeling the wind in the sky slightly, Charlotte felt a different kind of joy. The bloody glory in his body rotated in a wonderful rhythm, endlessly, and produced a power to get rid of the earth. On Earth, humans must use tools to fly off the ground. This leads to many people who yearn for freedom and will choose bungee jumping, parachuting, wingsuit flying, gliders. But no matter which extreme sport you choose, it is never real flying. It is not as good as the holy order in this world. It is truly relying on the manipulation of a majestic energy in the body to resist the traction of the earth and soar into the sky without restraint. Charlotte was actually a little afraid of heights. She didn't feel anything just now because she was so excited. But now she was a little scared. After all, she had no one to rely on and no protection. Juno Arthur didn't take action. After all, he was the strongest man in Baron and Charlotte's teacher. He was proud of his status. But the rest of Charlotte's saints went out in full force. Even Menelman joined the battle. The saints of the New World only resisted for more than 10 minutes before someone fell again. However, the other two speakers of the New World Congress, Avis and Module, also jumped into the air and joined the battle, which temporarily stabilized the situation. As soon as Avish was in the air, he was entangled by Kratos. The two sides fought for more than 10 moves, but there was no winner. He couldn't help but shout angrily, "What happened?" A New World Saint shouted loudly, "Charlotte Mechlin is back." He brought these helpers with him. The rest of the people on the ship where Mont Blanc was trapped by him were killed by them. Avish didn't expect that the master of the Dukedom of Mechlin would come back just when they were about to attack the Black Phoenix City. If only Charlotte came back, it would be nothing, but this guy actually brought a group of saints, each of whom was powerful, and he didn't know what means he used to trap Mont Blanc. Avish knew that the strength of this companion was only slightly weaker than his own. If someone could trap Mont Blanc, he would never be able to get away. After continuous questioning, Avish finally understood the root of the matter. He shouted loudly, "Charlotte Mechlin. We are willing to withdraw as long as you are willing to let Mont Blanc go." Charlotte sneered and didn't answer at all. What on earth is wrong with the leader of the New World? He actually wants to leave? And he actually wants to use this matter of leaving to exchange for Mont Blanc? Another speaker of the New World Congress, Module, was taken over by Menelman. Although he was surprised by the heroic appearance of the first rows of the Empire, he was more surprised by Menelman's strength. When he saw that Avis was also stopped and the fight was inconclusive, his heart sank. He knew that there was a group of saints in the Black Phoenix City. They were able to suppress the Black Phoenix City because the three speakers of the New World Congress were all at the 23rd level, which was stronger than any saint-level extraordinary person in the Black Phoenix City. But now Mont Blanc was trapped, and he and Avis were also entangled by enemies of equal strength. Once the group of saints in the Black Phoenix City joined the battle, there would be no more people in the New World Congress who could escape. The saints would still have the chance to escape, and ordinary people would definitely be captured. Module didn't know that Charlotte was very angry and had issued an order not to accept surrender. He used a special power, leaving a shadow behind, deceiving Menelman, and approaching Avish, forming a temporary 2-on-1 situation. Cresto's combat experience was unparalleled, and he withdrew from the battle in advance. When Menelman rushed up, he joined forces with the Empire's first rows to suppress the two speakers of the New World Congress again. Although Melchiel felt a little regretful that he failed to ambush Cresto, his main purpose was not to ambush this great enemy, but to communicate with Avish. He whispered, "The situation is very bad. We can't continue fighting. When the people in the city come out, I'm afraid we will be wiped out." Avish's face was terribly ugly, and he said, "I have proposed a ceasefire, but the other party refused." Melchiel said, "We need to make more concessions." Avish was very unhappy, but he knew that what Melchiel said was right, and he shouted, "Return Mont-Blanc. We are willing to concede 50 cities and sign a non-aggression agreement." At this moment, Mont-Blanc screamed, and Emilia finally began to eat. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.